I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. He's dying to get to see us on TV. So hurry. Does the little guy in the orange come on and tell us when there's a commercial?
That's what we need.
Welcome to the planning board meeting tonight.
10th?
Yeah, your upcoming meeting schedule, you've got it scheduled for April 10th is the next scheduled meeting.
Everyone is coming, right? Jerry just...
Yeah, Jerry will be a little late.
Okay.
He said he had a difficult time making 7 o'clock instead of 7:30.
Okay, anything else? Bills, payroll?
The bills and payroll are coming around for your signature. Minutes from the last meeting, February. Rich had a suggestion.
I have 2 edits and a sentence that I wanted to insert in the statement that I made.
Okay.
You want to say what they are, or?
If I wasn't here, I can't comment on it.
Well, okay, I'll comment in my part on it. Yeah, for the 500 King Street package store Archers for the liquor license, I did say I'd eventually go along with it, but it probably doesn't make any difference. From what I remember in the past, if something's recorded as a vote, it's probably a fair amount of work to change that. Is that?
Are we talking about the meeting minutes right now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Good.
I would, I can change the minutes. There wasn't a vote produced. There was no paperwork produced from the vote, so I can...
Right, so I said I'd go along. I just raised the issue that, did we need a liquor store in every corner in a dense area? But I did agree to go along with the board, so.
Okay.
You don't like
Yeah.
liquor stores on every corner?
It has you opposed.
Yes, I know, I read that. That's why I raised it.
Okay.
In fact, you were there, I said, no, I would go along with the board. And just beyond that, there's just a typo you may want to fix. Page 2,
Yep.
they're lying down, they're improving.
Yep.
Right. I think that's it, and there's always good minutes. Yeah, that's it.
And then
And-
Rich, you had...
Yeah, one statement to go in on page 2, towards the bottom of the first paragraph, after the word landowners, period. I want to add the statement that I said at that meeting. Mr. Crowley stated that we wanted to encourage open space and recreational activities, and felt that Mr. MacIver's suggestion would serve to do the opposite by putting impediments in the way.
So it wasn't a love fest that I missed.
Apparently.
Yes.
So we're still
Okay.
stewing about it.
Any other comments or...
Good one to miss.
Well,
I would have been here, but
it says provide funds to the landowners. Suggested that the APR could both protect the agricultural land and provide funds to the landowners. I thought you said funds to the town.
This is for APR or something?
Yeah.
It goes to the landowner.
The funds go to the landowner?
Yeah, it's an incentive to help them
Good.
get to the land, do a permanent protection,
the
which is
rural
why I was suggesting.
That yesterday?
Yeah. If they get money for it, then great, it helps them along.
Great. Anything else?
I make a motion, we move the minutes as amended.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. We done now? Can we go home?
See all the people come.
Yep,
Trust me, they're coming.
Yep.
I got that
The
sense.
people will be here tonight.
I gave you a draft scenic road procedure. I think you've seen it before, we've just never gotten to it.
Yeah, and it's very close to what we've seen before, but yeah, I put in the comment to avoid the problem we had when we don't have the owner of the project point here, that, it shouldn't be upon Jimmy Clyde or the board to figure it out, that it should be up to the applicant to show up, and if they don't show up, it can get postponed or canceled. And you need to show up and make the case.
Make them reapply and pay another fee.
Okay, so.
$1,000.
Right, number 9, the public hearing is held, one or more meetings. The applicant is requested to attend the hearings to present the project and answer any questions. Lack of project representation at the public hearing may result in the project being denied or postponed. So I did make that change.
Yeah, and that was nice. I think that relieves some pressure. The staff shouldn't have to take the brunt of some opponent doesn't bother to show up.
Now, Marion, what is the fee that goes along with this? Do you know? Not to put you on the spot.
Fee for Scenic Road, it's about, I think it's $100.
Yeah.
It's pretty minimal.
Okay.
Yeah, if we
All
can
right.
waive it if we
Yeah.
cancel looking back, or,
Yeah.
Yeah,
we can be flexible.
yeah, no, that's good.
They get one.
Yeah, it could be continued to show up.
One.
I would,
Okay, so if
It isn't a lot of money.
there are no more changes, I
Yeah, it
recommend
looks
you
good.
nice little
adopt.
working.
I move that we approve the draft scenic road application procedures.
Yeah, I'll second.
So moved, all in favor?
Aye?
It's not like we get a lot of them anyway.
Right, it's
You
just,
used to never even do them.
it's always good to have the procedure to point to.
So we're basically waiting for Sam for the point.
Yeah. There's a sign-up sheet here, and the agendas are here, but then the copies of all the bylaw amendments are in the back,
Okay.
in the back table.
What time were they supposed to be here?
7:10.
7 what?
7:10.
Huh.
They're here,
Part of them. Is everybody?
The hotel?
the important
Yeah.
part.
You're up.
I can start, and then the hotel representative is right behind.
Oh, good.
We'll give you another minute or two to take your coat off.
Time's up.
Hey, Tim, did you want to try to use the screens, or you're not set up for that?
No, at this point, we only have one board, so it's not too much.
Yeah, and sometimes people also.
It's really just for reference, but everyone knows the site, I think, so.
Are we still? No, he is coming.
He is, yep.
Want to see if this will stand up?
What's that?
Yeah.
Want to see if it'll stand up?
Absolutely.
Good, how are you?
Thanks, Mike, you can back.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Over there.
Oh, yeah, wherever's better.
Let's get his signatures.
Well, we lost. We had another one all done, I got lost.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm glad it's going
No, I'm not convinced that'll be easier for you.
That's okay.
Can you face it more towards the audience?
Absolutely.
Good.
You could.
I think
Right, better, yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay. Just might as well start.
What's that? I'll go first, because I have a little piece first before the hotel does, so. As you know, we touched on the last time I was here about the, when I gave the update that we are under agreement with the hotel for a parcel for Building H here. And similar to what we did, I believe over a year ago, is we have a total square footage approved for the entire site, for the property as a whole. We had originally, talked about 3 different locations for the hotel, either Building J, part of Building L in different configuration, or Building H. So at the time, we made the decision to have it in Building J as far as the square footage allotment goes. So now we've come to the agreement on Building H, so what we need to do, what Littleton Commercial Investments need to do, is just reallocate the square footage so that there's enough to accommodate the hotel needs here on Building H. And it's to expand this building. However, we're balancing it out where we, pull back from the other buildings, Building J, and some of these actually, Building D and F got a little bit smaller than what was approved, so some of that square footage moved over. So, same process that we had gone through, I forget the date, in 2012, We did a little reallocation, no change overall to the project as a whole, just shifting, so.
So will there be more rooms in the hotel, or it just?
No, I think the difference is really, we'd always said around a 100-room hotel. I believe this hotel is 105. The difference really in square footage needs from what we anticipated was that it's an extended stay hotel, so all the rooms are bigger. So there's just more, the suites and whatnot as opposed to a typical room, so.
Amenities, a little restaurant in the basement, right downstairs, pool.
I believe there's a pool. I'm not fully connected with the hotel. Phil, I don't know if you know more. I'm here, just so the record's straight, I'm here representing Littleton Commercial, Tim Power with Land Strategies, who you've met me before. Phil Cordero is here from Allen & Major, the civil engineer working directly for TMI Hospitality. So now that my piece is done, that he has the square footage, I'll let Phil speak to the hotel and anything else, but I'm happy to chime in for background and whatnot.
That's civil engineering. Who did the architecture for the hotel?
They have a group that the hospitality group, TMI Hospitality, is going to be building the hotel, is located out of North Dakota. So they have, out of Fargo, so they have a group out there that I'm not familiar with. that is
It
doing
looks
the
like there's no place nearby here. It looks like an urban landscape. But anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah, that's fine. So, so again, I'm here representing TMI, and I'm just going to put this up for reference so we could talk about it, is we want to modify the site plan approval documents that we have in place for the Building H Lot 7, to allow construction of this Hilton Homewood Suites, as you see here. As Tim had mentioned, a hotel had always been dreamed up for the site. It just so happens that this group is interested in this location, and we're able to make it work. And that's the site plan that we have in front of you. So just to address the comments, the questions that you already have, it'll be the typical hotel that you expect. So, pool inside, there'll be breakfast services and so forth. So, minor food preparation inside for the hotel guests. We're not anticipating, a restaurant in the lobby that would be advertised to invite people to come in, but for people that would be there as guests, they'd be able to take advantage of that. The site plan itself is, is relatively straightforward in that it was, again, always envisioned in the Lot 7 area. The footprint of the hotel is larger than what was approved on the last modification here, to the tune of, we had about 20,000 shown previously. Our footprint now is 26,000. The difference here is we are a multi-story hotel, so our total aggregate square footage is about 90,000 at about 3.5 stories. It does vary throughout the height across here. So that's what Tim is doing for Littleton Investments, to modify the total square footages for the entire property. We have 105 rooms here. We have 112 parking spaces that surround it, so one per guest, plus we have about 5 to 7 employees on the shift. So we're able to meet the zoning bylaw. All total, there's a reduction in parking on the site now from what was originally shown. We're just displacing that with some increased square footage of the building, and then some increased, yard areas in between the column lines of the building, the projections that come out. We'll have some green space and some sidewalks through there. Everything else will be consistent with all the plans that you've seen so far in terms of infrastructure development and so forth.
Health club gonna be in there too?
They'll have a fitness center, treadmill, stationary bike and so forth. That's planned for the ground floor, but I wouldn't call it a health club.
Okay, so it's not gonna be open to the public?
No, again,
Pool in the health club.
amenities for guests. That's right. You bet.
My biggest concern will be the green area outside. I want to make sure that fits well within the context of the overall concept that we have here. So we don't want to see lots of parking and just a few little arborvitaes. We see lots of green.
Phil, can I chime in on one
Go
piece
ahead.
there?
Yeah.
You actually have it shown on this drawing, if you could.
Sure, I can
we-
show you some landscaping.
We have the same concern as the developer, and there's actually a dash line on this plan that we negotiated a buffer edge, a sidewalk easement buffer edge to maintain green, so at least along Constitution Ave, there's a nice row, it's not parking right up against the curb. Otherwise, I think they've done a fairly good job of maintaining the pad that we've had approved.
On the side is showing 119. the left-hand side of it as opposed to, it's basically facing the inside of the property. So 495 is over here, correct?
Yes.
The
Yes.
left-hand side.
495 is here.
So this way here is where 119 would come along. What is our view that
That's
way?
the detention ponds in front of me, right?
Yeah, you can see it here, the corner.
119 would be here, as you're coming in on Constitution Ave, this would be our drop-off Port Cochere area.
Okay.
So that
Which is
ties
what we're
well,
seeing
here,
here?
here's the Port Cochere drop-off.
Okay.
You know, so we're looking at a slightly oblique angle from the main entry point, but this would be the drop-off. It's, I don't want to speak too much about the architecturals, you know, not being the architect of record for the project, but you can see it's a, you know, it's a stone-based product with the masonry above. We're working with Littleton Commercial Investments on making sure all the colors are complementary to the rest of the development. We want this to fit in here as well and not be a sore thumb or stick out of place. But we still want it to be branded as the hotel, the Hilton Home and Suites.
Yeah, so we'll see trees planted around the perimeter and so forth.
Well, that looks like downtown Napoleon, North Dakota is what it looks like.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
We were gonna get to the shape of it.
yeah, the architecture looks like something that's nowhere near here. I mean, it looks like urban landscape, even looking at here. And then the stone facade, that looks like no other hotel one, looks like nothing in Littleton.
An old western,
And, I mean, it really doesn't fit.
Okay, you'll see in our overlay design standards that we recommend things like clapboard, sloped roofs, all the types of materials that you'll see in town as you drive through
Okay.
New England.
And there's no stone facade like that. I mean, and looking at the plans, it looks like an urban landscape. But even when I've seen people do things like Bar Harbor where they have, you know, put up a new hotel, the series and stuff, it fits in much better. I mean, we have nothing in our area that looks like this. And, you know, we're supposed to agree to it, yeah, it's interesting, and, I mean, to me, it sort of looks ugly. I was very much in favor of hotel. I think the hotel is a great anchor. I see it plunked down, wetlands all around it, so all you see is the stark thing sticking out of the wetlands. You'll see off 495, 119, and to me, it just doesn't look good. It doesn't look like it is similar to anything else around here.
So, you know, not to summarize and not put words in your mouth, so from a site planning perspective, we're to the good, but we want to think about the architecture of the building a little bit.
Aesthetic.
Well, with the site plan, you're
Aesthetics.
plunked into wetlands. I
Yeah.
mean, it's impressive looking at the plans here
Yeah.
that, yeah, it's sort of shoehorned in, and
Yeah,
it's hard getting a good sense of it. I mean, civil engineering, I, you know, do understand, I don't, but when I see wetlands all around it, looks like it's shoehorned into a wetland.
yeah, we're in a tight spot here with the wetlands on both sides, the basin on one side, wetlands on one, wetland replication on the other. So it is fairly shoehorned in, so we've made it work from a site planning perspective. But, you know, we can work with the architecture. You know, I don't think that's a stumbling block here, you know, so I'll take this feedback and, you know,
If you want
we'll
to
get
see,
to it.
if you want to see
Yeah.
the newest building that was put into town according to the new design standards, you drive straight through town, there's a building just before the car dealership on the left. The car dealership actually owns that building. Green area all around, trees are just been planted. That's the kind of concept that fits in.
Okay.
And just to let you know, it's the new building of the Clapper, it's the other one no one else likes. It gets a little closer to that, and that's been a sticking point. It's, Toyota apparently insisted upon it, and at least that's the story I hear, but, you know, it's just, also I wonder, just what was that? Toyota apparently insisted upon the design of the building. Bob Rand claimed that he wanted clapboards, et cetera, but he was overridden by Toyota. That's what he says. I don't know. It was before my time there, so. But the other thing with the wetlands, and just trying to think how this works, is that, yeah, I look at something like this and it strikes me, yeah, is there gonna be trash floating out there? I mean, it seems like it's really plunked down in these wetlands with
yeah, shoehorned in.
no control there. So, yeah, I'm looking for something that works. You know, I'm not being negative to give a hard time. I want something that people will be proud of. And, because, you know, this will be seen right away from 495, 119, either it'll be enticing or an eyesore.
I think it fits the site fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we just need to work on something a little more aesthetically pleasing. Because Sam's gone out of his way to to make that whole project interesting. I don't think it's uninteresting, I just don't think it's as good as what he's.
Well,
what you guys are trying to accomplish.
I don't think it's a surprise to the board that, what the group comes in with, it's a brand. They come in with their brand identity, and then we have to work on focusing it towards the local flavor.
New England.
Yeah.
Throw some lobster traps in.
Some anchors, a lighthouse in the front, we can do that, it's no problem.
They need some improvement.
We will work with them. I know that the group is working with Sam Park and his company and his architects to work those elements out together, so.
And it seems
so
done
we
a
can
good
deal
job,
with
I
that.
think, for the most part.
I think so as well.
Didn't mean to put you through the meat grinder.
No, it's okay.
Stop beating them up.
Any feedback is good feedback, and again, what I'll do is I will take this and we'll talk to the group, and we'll talk about architecture. I guess the question that I always ask is, how do we want to implement this architecture? Do you want to see it again before we build it?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
No, we'll trust you.
Well, no, I mean in a formal sense. I know you want to see it, and we're happy to share it. I'm saying, informally
You
represent
can
it back
start
to you.
informally if you want to start floating around, if you have some other ideas.
That's what I
You
mean.
can go through Sam or get it to us, and, you don't have to,
More
wait for another
collaboration.
meeting.
You know what, we'll build it, we'll put a big cloth up and then pull the ribbon and it falls, and we hope you like it.
Yeah, that's
Move that
great.
bus.
Don't do that, that's what I'm hearing.
But
Got
when you
it.
look at other hotels along here, like Westford Regency, or even 128 in Lexington, where they have sort of newer hotels, the Loft, and I forget what the other one is, those are sort of interesting, they sort of fit in. I mean, I can see something like that, but this just doesn't fit. Well,
I think the message got
Mark, we
through.
have 2 votes that you need to take on this project. The first one is about swapping the building sizes. So if you're okay with that, I had a quick draft decision for you to consider.
yeah, that'd be the trust me type thing, but it's
No, I
probably
don't,
works.
we're talking 20
Yeah.
20,000 square feet, grand scheme of 700.
Yeah, you have
Right.
flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, okay, go ahead.
And then the second vote would be on the site plan for this. You could either vote to approve this site plan and then say prior to building permits, they come back with you and you look at the architecturals. That would give them a really, positive on that. If you're okay with the rest of the site plan, the only thing you're concerned about is the architecturals. Then
Pretty
you
much.
just do
I'd
that.
like to see how it works together. I mean, it's hard saying one thing's okay, but then.
Okay, well,
just
you've
sort of-
got all the comments from the building and highway and police and fire and everybody else. So you can vote contingent on reviewing the architectural for the building permit application. It's up to you.
I think, I'd like to see us go forward with it, but still keep the architectural aspect.
Is there any reason we need to swap the 20,000 square feet? Is there
Yeah.
any reason? Could you explain that to the public?
Why the change of dimension?
Do you want me to-
Maybe two.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, thing, it's not, it's, right now, we have, as part of our special permit for the whole project as a whole, we have approved 540,000 square feet, but we haven't allocated by lots. On the letter that we sent had a little table of what was where. Right now, for Building H and Lot 7, there's only 20,000 square feet total, not footprint, total, allowed under that permit, and there's, up where Building J is and some of the other buildings, there's excess that we now won't need, because we originally thought maybe the hotel might be in Building J. So all we're gonna do is subtract from 1 and give the square footage to Lot 7 so that it complies with the permits. So they have all the square footage they need to build their hotel, and
And
then
the aggregate will be fine.
the aggregate will be the same. So
That's
Building
nice.
J gets a little
Yeah.
smaller, D, E, and F get a little smaller, but match what we have.
That helps.
Good. Also, there's not a 20,000 square foot increase in
No,
total.
nope, the
The number's
project.
still the same.
Yep, project yesterday was 540,000 total, tomorrow it'll be 540,000 total,
Or less.
or less,
Well, that's,
right, or less. That's the
So how would you like this term so that we can move
so I think we
on?
need to approve,
Okay, there's language here, yeah, just let me read it for the first one, which is our 2A one. It's the italicized area, which is what the concern is, and we're just given a letter of review here. But it says, there hasn't been a substantial deviation from previously approved site plans, which we just heard. But then there's the sentence, further, the creation of tenant entry features is consistent with the design standard, capitalizing, calling for the traditional architectural details, create visual interest when viewed from facing streets, squares, pedestrian pathways, parking lots, or other significant pedestrian spaces. That's sort of my concern.
Okay, one suggestion, we could take that paragraph out and delay that until the second decision, till the
Yes,
site
I,
plan.
that would help me, otherwise I will either abstain or vote against it. But yeah, I understand you're trying to get approval of the footprint. Yeah.
That's fine, because that's part of the architectural part of it anyway, so why don't we
Yeah, it allows you to move ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
everybody good with it otherwise?
It's fine.
yeah,
Yeah,
so it's moving the italicized
Paragraph.
paragraph, yeah, so I'll move that.
All right,
Just the
motion to
italicized
remove
paragraph.
that, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minor modifications to site plan review. Lots 1 through 7. That's it, right here.
Yeah, but don't we have to vote, or is still the same thing?
This is the first one, we're doing the first
Oh,
one.
okay,
yeah. So moved.
go ahead.
Second.
We need a second.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Okay, so that's.
So I'm gonna leave the architectural aspect of it for a later date. Preferably before the What else?
Well, can't put it before building permits issued and construction begins, a facade protection.
Well, they're gonna have to, you're gonna have to come up with
Okay,
Close enough.
when do you want them? Some-
When do we have it redone?
Well, let me, we have conservation on the 24th, so it's the week after next, and I think your hearing is I think, the 27th, 2 weeks from tonight. I think we could,
No, we're on the third, we're on the 10th.
They don't have one scheduled in 2 weeks right now.
oh, you don't?
No.
Okay. Well, I think by the next hearing, we could definitely have something. Yep, you can put us on for that.
And that's not too late for you? April 10th?
No, I think that'd be fine. I mean,
I mean, you're not putting, changing the footprint, you're just changing
it'd just be architecture.
the suggested architecture.
No, we'll take that feedback and, we'll work with the comments here and Sam Park and we'll come up with something. Yeah,
It'd
here
be
are
good
the
having
comments.
people look what's around, so it fits in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll put you on for the 10th.
Yeah, take a drive down State Road, you'll see what's the building is.
We're gonna take a drive down with a camera and send it out to North Dakota and say, this is what New England looks like.
You know, you can actually Google the streets in town here. And with the person, if you drag that little person down onto the street, it's got street view.
Well, Sam's done a lot of nice,
Coolest thing.
he did a lot of nice boards with the street view going down and everything else. But maybe he did a couple of little, especially what the side's gonna look like, maybe with the back.
Yeah.
We're worried about seeing it from the highway if it looks like just a
Yeah, this is,
block
yeah.
building.
I
this is
do-
high profile.
Constitution Ave face and the highway face, I would say, are the two prominent, and then the rear is, the other two being less prominent.
You can't build 4-story trees.
So they're from your neck of the woods, Ottawa.
All right, well, hopefully, and if you have anything you want to pass before the board before the 10th, you're more than welcome to send it on tomorrow, and she can try to get some feedback before.
That would be helpful. You can send it to us, and we can individually send our comment back to her.
Okay, and we do have people on boards who are architects, and there's one there. People can help you focus on, Rick Finley, Bartlett, Harvey. I mean, there are people around that can, look at and maybe make suggestions.
Okay, thank you. And if you want to send us some pictures of other ones that you've done too, that are already built up, that would be helpful too, to see how they fit. The more you give us, the better off. Thank you. All right, great, thank you.
Clabbered,
We have a
maybe?
7:30.
Clabbered, slope groups.
Public hearing, Aquifer District Special Permit, 671 Great Road, site plan modification. 671 Great Road.
Two sheds that have been added on that.
And we're trying to include that in the square footage of the building. As the interior, and I ain't going to do it.
Happy Easter.
Give me one of those, would you? I tried those.
For St. Patrick's Day?
Oh, is that, I'm early.
Or maybe they're just green.
Thank you.
Are we ready?
Yes, please.
So we were here a couple of weeks ago. Hearing notice.
I think he's got to read it first, Sherry. Who gets the big money for? Or did you already read it? No,
Nope. Public hearing, Aquifer District Special Permit, 671 Great Road. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 13, 2014, at 7:30 PM in Room 103, the Shattuck Street Town Hall, to consider the application for a special permit pursuant to Mass General Law 40A and the Code of Town of Littleton zoning, Aquifer and Water Resource District. Property location 671 Great Road, Assessors Map R24, Parcel 11A. Applicant is Attorney Sherry Gold. The application is for an Aquifer District special permit to allow a change of proprietorship for a site with over 15% impervious within the Aquifer District. Application and plans can be viewed at the Planning Board and Town Clerk's office during their regular business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed plan should appear at the time and place designated. You're on.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'd like to present to the Administrative Secretary the certificate of service with all the green slips and the publication. So we were here a couple of weeks ago on an informal basis, and we presented to you this property. This is 671 Great Road. For those of you who don't know it by its street address, it's the old carpet building where Bob, forgot his last name. Your last name? Demko is, conducts his carpet shop. And the building faces Great Road here, and it has pretty much always been used as retail. There exists a couple of shed additions in the back here that you wanted some explanation about. And we presented to the board that this is a pre-existing non-conforming structure and a non-conforming site, and it was the intention to just refurbish the exterior, not make any change to the footprint, not make any change to the impervious. And this board asked us to create a site plan, which we have reviewed with the Littleton Lake Water Department, and they have commented back. And the engineers, I think, have done a good job of improving the drainage. It was requested that we do a little something to improve the drainage. The intent is to fill it, to create more retail stores across the front, to continue with the back being storage. And so on this plan, it's showing 5,000 square feet of retail with about 9,000 square feet of related retail storage. There was one comment back from the Board of Health today, Jim Gariffi from the Neshoba Board of Health, and he expressed that the septic permit is good for 8,500 square feet of retail, and he has no problem if it expands to the 8,500 square feet of retail with the balance being related storage. So I'd like to propose that as the only modification to the site plan, that we will push that line back here, that it, potentially, that it won't be just limited to the 5,000, that we can go to the full 8,500. And also, in creating the new facade and the building, it was the intent that these sheds be now legitimated. There was a comment from the building inspector that those sheds were sort of add-ons without any building permits. And provided that we stick to the 8,500 square foot of retail, I think it would make some sense to allow the developer to make those sheds more permanent and integrated as part of the building, subject to the building code and building inspector approval, so that we'll probably square off this back a little bit, depending on what the future users' needs are.
There were more roofs than sheds. They just like the loading dock area kind of thing.
They were more like lean-tos.
Yeah.
They were more like lean-tos.
Just kind of keep the rain,
What I put my horses under. And I'd like to introduce the engineer from Hancock is Brian Goodrow, and he's going to show you the changes, or the improvements that they made on the site more specifically.
All right, so just touching base on existing conditions right now. The majority of the site is paved currently. It's the gray area. We have our 14,100 square foot building. Topography slopes generally from the back to the front, along with all the drainage. The original site plan was approved in '76. On-site stormwater was managed through a leaching catch basin in the front. During our existing condition survey, we weren't able to assess the condition. It was buried in snow. For proposed conditions, we're not touching the building in terms of size We're maintaining all the setbacks to the property lines. We're not touching the impervious outside of a milling and an overlay. There are two reasons for that. The primary reason being ADA accessibility. In the front, currently, there's a ramp, which is basically a bituminous kind of ramp that goes up to the existing sidewalk. We're going to take that out, saw cut the existing sidewalk in front of the building, create tip down, and create an actual accessible entrance to the building. The second reason that we're going to be milling and overlaying is to make slight grade adjustments for our stormwater management system. Currently in the front, there's about a 2-foot berm with plantings. We propose to take that down and create a bioretention area. It's going to be 6 inches deep with 2 infiltration wicks, which basically will accept sheet runoff from the front, which is going to be the majority of the parking and busiest side portion of the site. To take stormwater into the system, treat it, and then discharge it into the sandy soils below. We don't expect groundwater to be an issue. There's a wetland across the street that's more than 250 feet away. It's about 30 feet lower than the site. The site sits on sandy soils, so we're allowing stormwater to be treated through the grass and then infiltrate into the ground. As a part of the milling and overlaying of the parking lot, we're restriping and we're proposing an additional 16 spaces. Currently there are 20 on site. We propose 36 in total to help support the additional retail space. That's about it. Questions?
Rainwater from the roofs, where does that go?
Currently there's downspouts scattered around the building. It's generally a flat roof. There was some speaking about the shed structures. Those are all just sloped roofs that go down directly onto the pavement. So there's downspouts in the back that shoot into the, or that discharge into the ground here. They go onto the pavement and then discharge either into our proposed on-site stormwater or off into the undeveloped neighboring lot.
Percentage-wise, how much of the roof ends up shedding onto the pavement?
Onto the pavement, you know, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you. I can tell you definitively the sheds do, because you can see the slope, but it's a flat roof, so you'd have to get up there and kind of figure out what was going on. In terms of Littleton Water, we got a comment from them stating that they were good with the infiltration that we proposed, and we had committed if we were going to structurally change the building to any significant degree, we would reassess that to see if we could introduce some more
No, I think
infiltration.
your water treatment's a great improvement on that side, the retention, bioretention along the wicks. Very good improvement.
So you would accept that as a condition?
For what?
What you just mentioned about the water department, you agree to the fact that you're gonna make a structural change?
If we would revisit that, correct. And we've already made that commitment to the
Mr.
water
Chair, I think that's in the
department.
draft
It's in
decision.
the
Oh,
letter.
okay,
yeah.
I mean, this is just a more recent letter from Savas. And just sort of wondering about where the sheet flow goes on adjacent property, you have no control over that, but you do impact it, you affect it, right?
It's an existing condition where we're not gonna be impacting it with what we're doing. It's just where the water goes right now.
Right.
It's the undeveloped portion of the lot. There's a catch basin down here that discharges to the wetlands, so eventually it's gonna get into this catch basin and then go out.
But just reading Savas's more recent letter, his
About
revised
the
letter,
vegetated.
it reemphasizes if something happens to the adjacent property, then it should have some improvement. Is there any control over that whatsoever?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. MacGyver, I read that letter, both letters actually, as Savas asking this board
Yeah.
to be sensitive if the adjacent property comes before you, to make sure that you remember that the two properties in conjunction, the second property should also have some sort of treatment. I did not read that as requiring this property to do anything for
Right,
it.
but you have no connection with other property.
No,
other than-
no.
Right, well, that's what I was trying to get.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I didn't
I
understand
had
the
this sort of
question.
same feeling that you
Yeah,
did.
I didn't
but-
understand.
Now you put the burden on anybody who builds on the property next to them to mitigate any issues that you are running over to them.
From your sheet erosion.
So, I think it should be a condition that if the property is developed, that the two of you work together to mitigate any water runoff or excess.
I don't,
Granted, is it something you do now? No, but if the other side is rendered 30% impervious for what you guys are already over your 30%, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's an existing
Then,
condition. If they were to
I know
develop
it's an
this,
existing condition, but in the long run, if someone builds next to you, then you're gonna try and put that much more water in such a short period of place.
Are you residential, is that
If
residential
this-
next to you?
It was just, it's just a
It's
business.
part of the
strip.
business.
Yeah, isn't it?
it's part of the farm that's back here on the other side of the brook. If this lot were to be developed, it would be held to stormwater management standards, which means you need to analyze all the contributing watershed, which would include part of this property. So in terms of the amount of impervious area and the runoff that's associated with that, that would all be part of the design process that would come before you.
So-
But he's saying that you're essentially
Except,
driving the water.
except, Mr. McIver, this is a
Yeah.
pre-existing building and pre-existing condition. Theoretically, we could argue that this board doesn't even have any reason to put any controls on it, so we are already improving. I'm not satisfied with any condition into the
Okay,
future.
I'm just trying to get a better understanding, looking for a better final.
They've done
solution.
more than they really need to do
Yeah.
here.
Oh,
They're-
okay.
It's strictly a change of proprietorship.
Yeah.
They're taking the high road by even coming in. They
They're
don't
doing
really
the
need to come
bioretention
in.
one, right, okay. I was just trying to look for the full solution.
Usually we just try to, we try to make it as painless as possible. Come in, do whatever they can,
To
modernize
Peter's
it.
point though, will there be a berm of some sort at the edge of the parking area between the parking and the green area on the east?
You're talking here?
Yeah, along that side?
We're leaving the impervious as it stands right now. We're not-
Will there be a
we're not
berm at the
developing
edge of the parking area between the paved?
You talking Cape Cod or bituminous berm?
Cape Cod.
There's nothing there right now that I've seen, so we would maintain it as is. Right now, all this just sheets off into the adjacent property and then goes to the catch basin and filters out the rest of the way. There is a curbing that is located right here next to our proposed fire retention area that's gonna be saw cut, pulled out, and then a stone apron put in to reduce erosion, which is all in the detail.
I think I'd like to see a berm along that east side.
Along here, if you do that, you're gonna start channelizing flow and directing water
Gonna create
into Great Road
more
and then going into the gutter. I would rather see it kind of maintain how.
The way it
it's
is now, I
being
like
right
that it
now.
does go over there now and it just dissipates freely now.
We don't
What
have
I'm
the
worried about
jurisdiction
in the
over it.
future is if someone does the exact same building next to you and they run their stuff your way.
Again,
That's what I'm-
that would be the condition that they have to meet stormwater management to the fullest extent
For them.
of the standard, because it's an undeveloped lot, so they're fully
They're doing-
required.
Like I said, the owner is doing the best they can with an existing situation. They're doing minimal improvements to it. But basically, all they're doing is making it so you can have multiple tenants in there.
I think everything that they've proposed is great. The only problem I see though is the any oils or any contaminants from the asphalt flowing off the new green area.
And you think a berm is gonna stop it?
Yeah, locate crusher and it keeps it on the asphalt and brings it right to the retention pond in the front.
And is that there now?
They're gonna be putting a retention pond in the front.
And if it's not gonna get to there, it's gonna go down the roadway, just like you said, and out to the.
It goes from Jason,
the
what
picture of
Douglas was suggesting is a green boundary, vegetative boundary, which is essentially a culture.
The whole side yard is acting as a swale as it
So
is
the
now. Why,
topography.
why change what's worked since the seventies? We've had no issues of flooding over there or anything else. All he's proposing to do is take one big building and make it so multiple tenants can.
Let me see if I understand you then right, Mark. If there's oils and contaminants or other asphalt, you don't mind it flowing into the green area and onto the next
I absolutely
person's
do,
property?
but I don't think there's no way we can put catch basins in
I'm
here
not asking for catch basin.
in order to trap the oils and everything else.
The
You have to
oil
do it with a
traps.
catch basin. You can't do it with a berm. A Cape Cod berm's not
No,
gonna catch
it
oil.
channels the curb,
No,
it
it's
channels
not.
the water to the
It's gonna go right up to
bio
the,
retention pond.
it's not going up to the bioretention.
But we're
pond.
not improving,
But
we're not increasing
why are
the
you
parking.
imposing a restriction on this, or why are you asking them to modify this property
Because
from its
they're,
current state? I mean, should we do that for all of it?
because they're Beaumar the whole parking,
They're
they're building a
doing
whole
what?
parking area.
They're rebuilding it?
No, they're not.
Yeah,
They're only
they're-
taking
We're just
most out of the
striping it,
front.
we're not
Yeah.
rebuilding the
And
parking
it's
at all.
minor.
Didn't I hear you say
Wait,
you're?
didn't we just,
Restriping.
Richie, we just met on this, and you had no problem with them rebuilding part.
No, I thought you just said that you're gonna be
No.
reclaiming the asphalt. Did you use the word reclaim?
No. Yeah, it's gonna be a mill and overlay.
A mill.
In this area for
Mill and
ADA
overlay.
A milling
accessibility.
overlay, that's a
I
brand
mean,
new.
we're maintaining the
Mr.
exact.
Crowley, right in the front for the handicap ramp.
This,
so.
this issue is no different than the old dog the dog place there,
I mean, if Donald's
Supply
came in
more,
front of us and
whatever.
said they wanted to redo their parking
So
lot,
let
we
me-
can put a
excuse me.
berm in?
So let me understand this, you're not milling the whole parking area? You're not touching the rest of the parking area?
This is Mr.
Dave
Guthrie.
Guthrie. No, our intent is not to mill. I don't know that we won't overlay that area. Just because aesthetically, I think it's broken up a little bit, but it's really difficult to assess under
So-
these conditions. I don't want to rule an overlay out as an improvement to the building.
Yeah, so with that, it's all, that's new work. And with new work, you know, I just can't see allowing oils and contaminants for, you know, all we're talking about is a berm.
Why don't we just put this to a vote?
This is no different than what went on in the common when the dog pet supply more went out and a multiple tenant went in. They didn't even bother to come before us.
This is not the common, this is a different
This
site.
is no different.
Completely different. You're in their water act, the apple.
So if he did nothing,
You're right over the well track.
but chief, he did nothing to the property, didn't touch the property, didn't stripe it, and just parked cars
I
in.
wouldn't have an issue with it.
So what are you trying to mitigate?
They're they're changing, they're doing new work over the old.
They're putting down what, new asphalt?
New asphalt.
And that's bad?
No, it's a good thing.
I'm killing it, I
But
don't get it.
Samus doesn't have a problem with it, and, yeah, he looked at it, he had a discussion with Hancock, and I think it's sort of a minor change, but certainly,
We
since they have
understand,
that adjacent
anybody who
lots.
tarred their parking lot, would put in mitigation for any runoff from the.
I can see if they were making the building bigger, if they were changing the footprint, that they're not. They're just trying to upgrade a building that's way too big for the tenant that's in there now, wants to have multiple tenants to help pay the rent. I don't see any problem with that. As a matter of fact, I think we spent enough time, and I think you're right, I'd like to close the hearing and take a vote on this.
Yeah, and there's the condition, if they're gonna make a structural change, they'll have to address it.
Right, so you're gonna do
So it
something.
isn't just like a free ride, I mean, it's so responsive, they are improving it.
I just don't see what the problem is by putting a berm up.
I think you're asking them to provide a mitigation for a problem that doesn't exist.
It's oils and contaminants exist on all parking areas.
And
So
it's-
you mitigate the whole town.
So it's been cleaning out, it's
When
been
you,
going
when you have,
naturally to
when
the
you have a new
land next
condition
door.
coming before you.
And it's- We're done. I'd like to.
I understand where he's going with this, and again, my issue was with somebody next door made impervious, they had that much more water, that one little tiny area, and they'll have to meet their situation, and you guys, I think, at the time will assess some of that also. The only question I actually have about all this is, these two parts where you added shed roofs, or not you, the previous owner, whoever owns, put these sheds up, they did it without any permits, nothing's inspected or anything else. Are you adding those square footage of those enclosed areas, is what it looks like there, to add to the interior of the building? You're counting that as interior floor space, correct?
The 14,100 square
Right.
feet is inclusive of
Okay.
those shed areas.
And again, you know, I mean, I love business, you know, the more the merrier, but there's, how many square feet was added to that shouldn't be part of the square footage of that building to begin with, correct? How big are the two sheds?
Do you have the exact number?
No, I
I
don't
think
have
it
the
went from
exact
12 to
numbers.
14, so.
So you added 2,000 plus square feet.
You don't think it's
I
that
don't
much?
think that big.
Maybe 1,400 more.
If I may, if I may stand, this one here, I want to say, this one here is that lean-to structure that we speak of, open sides, almost a cover. The protective structures, I think, is how they started for the overhead garage doors that are assembled across the building. There's one here, I think there's one here, and there's one over here.
Okay.
And then they were dropped, what appears to be Texture 111 just brought down as sides. This doesn't appear to be a foundation anywhere. They're substantially
heated?
brought. I will say they are professionally attached to the building through the brick structure, but it's the side cavities that really I would suggest have probably lived their life. They're somewhat
Are
substandard.
they heated?
They're not heated.
So it's
They're not.
basically a protection for the loading bays. of the-
That's what it appears to be.
But again, they've added that as square footage to the building. They're calling that square footage of the,
Is it leasable? What do you ask you? Lease that to somebody?
No, I think it would be a support area for the function of the building more so than it would be leasable space. You know, I think if this was a little yard, if somebody had retail in here and had to bring displays in and out, or to store displays, or something along that facet, I think it would be, I don't know that it's leasable, it's unconditioned. It's on the exterior of the building, it's more of a protected structure. We're not in love with it. It exists, we thought we'd just sort of
Try and make it work for something?
Or make it more substantial than what it is, you know, block it up and use the roof, it's there. So
Why don't we leave it like this, as long as you don't make a major improvement to it and add heat to it, we'll consider it outside storage.
that seems
As
fine.
part of the building,
Yeah.
as it's always been.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna do something else, you're gonna come before us, come before the building department for a permit to make it, if you're gonna heat it, if you're gonna make it secure, something like that, come before them for that. And if you gotta do that, then maybe we'll address the drainage on the side, but.
We're independent of if what we do I don't know what, improve it is not gonna modify your impervious. I sense the point here, and I don't know that I'm necessarily opposed to the condition, that if something were built here, I think it's, I know we're not subject to it, but it almost seems right or wrong. If this is developed, and this grass swale is required by your water group for the protection of the aquifer, I'm not opposed to building that piece on my dime. It seems right, it's my water, it seems like it's my responsibility.
That's very good.
You know, I think that's the right thing to do. If it gets into some $50,000 infiltration system, well, obviously, I didn't plan on that when I was buying this asset, but if it's that grass swale that's mentioned in that letter, I would certainly think you could impose that grass swale on this applicant, and I would cover the cost of it. I think that would be the right thing to do.
We'll do that as condition approval. I'll move to close the hearing.
Second.
I would, with that condition,
All those in favor?
Aye.
With that condition, that if something happens that's doing.
Close.
Sorry, but those sheds, again, no permits have ever been pulled for those, correct?
Correct.
Roland did look at them. Was his determination that they are of standard?
No, I spoke to Roland about it and asked him if he would have any issue if the applicant went before him to pull the permits and get them up to standard. And he said that was fine with him.
Is that, you're good with that, sir?
Yeah, we prefer that.
All right,
Because
so
it's
part of the
harmonized.
condition that is also, I don't know if that's in our purview or not, but
The improvements.
that's gonna be part of the improvement. All right, if Roland's good with that, I'm good with it.
It won't modify your impervious.
The only thing I would ask on your conditions, in clause number 1, the first sentence reads, semi-annual groundwater monitoring activities shall be, and I'd like that word changed to may, because later on in the paragraph it says, right now, the water department doesn't require any monitoring, but if they do in the future, we'll do it.
That's not being monitored now?
No,
Okay.
That's close to the well,
Yeah.
how close? Zone 2.
Yeah, I did ask Salvis the question if he wanted monitoring wells on that site. He said they have wells at the spec pond site. So he didn't see the current need for them, but likes that condition in there in case
Okay.
there's a future need based on anything going on at this site.
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Did you vote the, did you
May
vote
at
the
the
permit?
discretion of
Didn't
whom?
we what?
Did you vote the permit, or did you just vote to close?
Would you say change it from shall or may? At the discretion of?
Right, what usually happens is the water department will let the planning board know that they would like to have.
So it'll be at the discretion of the
Water
water
department,
department.
subject to the planning board's approval. Right.
With those two conditions attached, I'll entertain a motion to approve the aquifer resource special permit for this second site. So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any other questions on the site plan?
No.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the site plan as presented.
Second.
Second, so moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Can't throw candy tonight. Oh.
Zoning maps, flood insurance study. Is this all global warming now? Littleton's gonna be flooding, we're gonna do that now?
Not yet, not yet. We need Cindy's Farmers Road.
That's Fletcher's.
Oh, yeah, that's right, there.
People in the back.
Okay. Okay, we have a continued public hearing on the definitive subdivision and open space special permit Farmers Row Estates off of Great Road.
I think Matt was going to be using the streets.
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah.
Oh, cross. Where was the old man? The old man said to me.
As soon as it wakes up, yeah.
And you make me run behind.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what we mentioned.
Oh, you ready for me?
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Good evening, for the record, Douglas DeShane. With me this evening, Matt Waterman from Land Tech Consultants, Inc. We had hoped to focus tonight on technical issues relative to the peer review report that we received from Green International Affiliates. There was a very extensive review, very comprehensive review done of the plan and the application, resulting in some 86 comments. We have reviewed those comments, Matt and I, and feel that many, if not most of them, are very easy to address. And in fact, some of them are, typographical, administrative types of things. However, there are a handful or so of comments in which I think your peer reviewer has suggested that the planning board may want to weigh in on some of the issues, and I think our time would be best spent perhaps going directly to those, and so we can talk them through and get some direction on how you want us to address that relative to the peer review. I mean, we're happy to address any of the comments, but I don't know if you want to discuss, that we need to change an inverter, sort of that kind of thing. But with that, Matt, I don't know if you want to address them, or perhaps your peer reviewer wants to, direct us in those specific issues that you wanted your input from.
Give us the fine point. Yes, if I may, I can go through the more specific comments, as you're saying, that we may want input from the board.
This is more of a working session to get a feeling of.
Yeah, and I understand that our engineers are going to try and meet with you guys next week to walk through the other more technical administrative changes. Certainly don't want to spend your time going through those, but again, there were a few that we need some input.
So I just think this final decision, you're going to need more time.
Oh, yeah, we're going to
So-
need
so-
time to address all these, get it back for re-review, and then, hopefully we'll get a letter back saying that all the comments have been, then we can talk about,
So it's best use of time.
yes.
Yeah.
So I'm Tom Bigelow, we're from Green International also. We have Eric Atkins here. Mostly the subdivision was designed largely in accordance with the subdivision regulations. As was said, we had some, typographical errors, some things that need to be changed to meet certain material specifications, things of that nature. There was a traffic assessment report that was prepared by Green and Peterson. That was largely in accordance with the subdivision regulations and very minor comments, and we took no exceptions with that analysis that was done. Also, they gave us a cost estimate for the work. We did a cursory review of that. It was estimated at $1.96 million, which was enough to cover the construction costs, engineering costs, and also inspection of the work as it's being completed. And we felt that that was adequate to cover the cost of the project. More specific comments regarding providing a list of waivers. They are, at this time, they're not asking for any waivers from the board, but some of our comments, depending on how they choose to address them, they may end up needing to request some waivers in the future if they choose to do so. The large portion of the site is on the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program habitat, and we recommend that the board make any and all requirements and conditions that they may impose on the site be a part of the condition for definitive plan approval.
Which comment is that, just?
That is comment number 5. We also suggest that the roadway cross-sections be submitted as required by the regulations, and also construction management plans which include traffic management plans, proposed truck routes, and also proposed hours of construction be submitted for review and approval. Also a water study showing adequate fire flows, and also confirming that the thrust blocks they propose conform to the Littleton Water Department standards, and also the Littleton Fire Department and the board approve of the fire hydrant layout. Currently, they are proposing a fire hydrant within 500 feet of every structure, which the regulations state 500 feet along the street of every. But as you can tell by the layout, the houses are pushed back towards the end of the lot. So they appear to be meeting the intent of the subdivision regulations, but not meeting the very word of the regulations. We also suggest they provide a sanitary sewer study, which will include calculations and impacts on the existing sanitary sewer systems, and also incorporate Figure 4 of the subdivision regs, which is sewer and stormwater encasement when they are within 10 feet of water lines. They are providing utility and access easements throughout the property. We just suggest that they provide 2 additional easements. One is for a outfall from a infiltration basin, proposed infiltration basins that will go onto adjacent property. And also, one is for an existing culvert that the town may need access to in the future in order to clean out if it were to fail or back up or something like that. We also suggest that they provide an inlet and hydraulic grade analysis. We did have some comments on their storm drainage system, and those analysis are required in the regs and also could clear up a few issues that we had found on some of our comments. Streetlights are not shown in the plan, and they're not required by the regulations, but the board may require them if they choose to do so. These are local minor roads, but as of now, there are no streetlights on Great Road themselves, and that is a busy road, so that may be something that the board would like to stipulate. The landscaping plans were looked at. The overall, they are proposing street trees. The overall percentage of trees didn't exactly meet the regulations, so we've asked them to revise that. And also, one of the trees they have suggested, asked to plant is subject to what is called emerald ash borer, which could kill the tree, so we asked them to come to a replacement tree.
It's a maple or something?
I forget what the exact tree is, I believe it was a maple, yes. And we have a landscape architect that suggested a few other replacements that they could possibly use. And also, the minimum tree size did not meet the 3-inch caliper. We have asked for a typical section. They have 2 cul-de-sacs. They provided it for the main roads, but they did not provide it for the cul-de-sac portions of the roadway. We've also asked for information regarding the roadway geometry, such as curb radius, curb length, so we can review whether or not it meets site distance and minimum design speed requirements. So we were not able to review that aspect of the subdivision. And also, there's most of the vertical profiles of the roadway, as the roadway goes up and down, has been designed per the regs and per Mass DOT standards. There was just one intersection, Henke Circle and Telmark Road, that did not quite meet the regulations, and we've asked them to revise that. 3 of the lots did not meet the 100-foot frontage requirement within the zoning regs, and also 3 lots did not meet the 4,000 square foot minimum. And we also reviewed their stormwater report. So the total suspended solid calculations were reviewed. We've asked them to provide one additional, what's called a treatment train, to prove that they are meeting the minimum requirement of 80% total suspended solids removes. We also asked them to revise one of their calculations as it wasn't up to the Mass DEP stormwater handbook regulations to get all the TSS removal that they were taking credit for. The design of the infiltration basins towards the back of the property were reviewed. The applicant placed them in fill material, which is more or less prohibited in the stormwater handbook. There is a potential of it failing if it's placed in a fill condition with large embankment slopes. And also, the stormwater handbook doesn't allow infiltration and total suspended solid credit to be taken for when you put something on new constructed material such as that. We've also asked 3 soil samples be taken in the area of one of their infiltration basins. They have been taken for one basin, but not the second. We also,
They're both behind the cul-de-sacs.
yes, they are both behind the cul-de-sacs, behind the houses, yes. And also the open space development density calculation. We understand that that was agreed that it would be done per the old zoning regulations, the 2011 zoning regulations. However, that was not submitted as part of the application, so we were not able to do that.
Right, and the open space is 156 acres, about 80 acres or so, roughly.
Yes, the site's about 8 acres.
Some of it being wetlands and stuff.
So those were the major comments that we had.
And there are particular questions or things you'd like us to?
Oh, yeah, I guess there were a handful, and Matt, correct me if I missed any. For instance, comment number 9 says that the board may require a stormwater drainage easement be obtained where a subdivision is traversed by a water course, drainage way, or channel. An easement along the existing farm road, Robbins Lane, may be required depending to whom the open space is deeded. We respectfully, for the maintenance of the culvert, we respectfully defer to the board for determination. I guess, maybe you can help me with that one.
I think it's the culvert in the back along where Robbins Road traverses this water course. Didn't bring my point there, I apologize.
There's a culvert there today, is the point. The question is, do you want an easement to be able to get into that culvert to replace it should it fail? I guess, quite frankly, we have no problem with providing an easement there.
But it's not part of a roadway, it's not part of the driveway system, it's...
Correct. It would be part of the open space land. So our concern was if that is deeded eventually as conservation land, that it would be difficult for the town, say the highway department, to get back there if it's conservation land. If it were just given to the Parks Department, it may be less of a concern.
But the easement could be.
Why don't we show the easement there?
Yeah, the easement's the easiest solution.
It's there. Streetlight, question on the streetlights.
Maybe some on the top, I understand you're going to a field, you're gonna definitely need some streetlights if you incorporate them as part of the housing in the subdivision itself, and maybe something at the top.
Yeah, usually at the houses, you do a lamp out, but I guess the question is, should we show a streetlight is it like at the intersections is the concern, or?
We would defer to the board on where they...
As it's a long way in before you get to that first. So perhaps we show streetlight at the main intersection, is that?
The main way in and out.
Out front,
Yep.
and then at the intersection in?
Maybe minor lighting.
And then lighting it
On each driveway. Okay, you got that?
Yeah, you don't need
We don't-
floodlights.
yeah,
Yeah,
we don't need
minimal
lighting.
lighting.
Yeah, I know you don't want us to light the place up.
Just
but-
the 4 intersections though, the 2 entrances and the 2 intersections.
Right, and then we'll show street light or
Post light.
post
Those
lights
lights
at
on
the,
every lot.
okay.
Same thing with street trees. Obviously, we're probably not gonna put trees in the middle of the field, but street trees along the roads where the houses actually are.
Right, and I think the comment on the street trees was more the type of tree, too. That's fine.
We want palms.
I wish they would grow. And I do certainly,
Why wouldn't we want trees along the road all the way in?
It's field right now. We kind of try to keep trees, keep the field to look like
It's
a
gotta be a
field.
road.
I mean, well, right, but there are agricultural fields and so it may be farming.
I like that idea, 2 trees scattered on the way in.
Yeah.
Like all
Would show,
Georgian
We're still a New England town. That's what we have next to the road.
It's, as far as the one up on near Harvard line, it's on the phone. Yeah, and pine trees going down, maybe that one back.
But they'll have houses on either side. This is gonna have no houses there.
No, there aren't any houses that further down into what I'm saying, but still. What's, three houses, three trees aside? For the length of it from there all the way in? Where it go in the field?
Show more than that.
Who's going to sleep? Huh? So the monitor here, the laptop keeps going to sleep.
The second road in has trees on it anyway, that's right where that, so.
The one on the left-hand side has trees, because it's a little tar path, but it has to be widened, but it's not woodland, right?
So we'll show some trees along the entry, along the driveway in.
Is that be all right with you?
Show them on the plan, sure.
They already proposed trees on
I was gonna say, I think we do have trees going all the way in. That would be nice, thank you. We can reallocate those out of the field,
No, they want them in the field now.
in the field?
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna do some agriculture, you may not want a whole wood structure out in the fields.
So you want them to have trees?
Trees.
Trees on the way in, on the way in.
So maybe the type of tree they want.
Is this road gonna be accepted or not, a private way or public? Public rights.
No trees there now?
Yeah, we used to be before they cut them all down.
Anyway, next.
Is that how we're doing stuff? We're just, one guy just speaks up, so we just have that stuff on that?
But bylaw, you say that.
Vote on it.
You asked for trees, then we're putting trees in.
I'm hearing trees are not going to be put in, and the trees are shown on the drawing.
They
They're
are.
saying that's a great idea to keep the trees on the drawing. I'm not asking to add trees, I'm saying to keep them on the drawing.
Oh, I said it should be trees on it, I thought, because it was a field, and we would. One board wants them to put the trees.
That's all.
Anyway, anything else, any other guidance you need from?
Well, obviously, I presume you want us to talk with the water department on how we cut into their lines, not you guys.
Now, same with the fire department, you have to put hydrants where they want.
Yeah, and that, we're gonna sit with them, and I guess the question is, as long as the fire department says that the hydrants within 500 feet of every house is meeting the intent of one every 500 feet on the road, you would be okay with that? Because, I mean, otherwise, what it means is we put a fire hydrant out in the field, you know?
Obviously, you don't want something on the road, right?
Yeah, right.
And then.
But if you go every 500 feet, you end up with a couple hydrants floating, and yet we have a hydrant within 500 feet of every house, so.
Well, to the extent that you can service the house.
Right, but the regulation just says you gotta put one every 500 feet on the road. I don't think they anticipate that you might have that much road before you hit a house.
If I may, I believe it meets the intent of the regs. The fire department may want an extra one for bleeding the line, that sort of thing, but I think it generally meets the
You're gonna
intent
have
of
to
the regs.
We'll sit down with them and have them tell us. Again, I don't wanna go through all these, other than the ones that, well, I guess there is one there. We provided street cross-sections at a scale of 1 inch equals 4 feet. I guess your regs call for a different scale. Do you want us to give you the one in the right scale, or is the one we have, is that the question there?
I believe the one on the plan said it wasn't to scale, so if that actually is to scale.
Okay, so we need to make sure it's to scale, that was your point.
That was our.
We can do that.
It's not a big sticking point.
Again, these guys are gonna try and get together in the next 2 weeks. What's that?
It's only a 9-lot subdivision.
I know, I just wanna make sure we cross the Ts. So I guess with that, unless you have some questions or wanna talk about something else,
The only thing I want to talk about.
I have Dawn's memo, I will address that with my client.
I want to know where we're at with, I know you can't do anything with national heritage, just you.
Right.
Where you are with conservation, because we haven't heard conservation weigh in at all.
All right, we went to Conscom as your regs required, and we showed them the plan and filed what's called a request for determination, which really, they just review the plan and determine for us what we need to file with them.
But they haven't done that yet.
Oh, yes, they have. They came back and filed, they gave us what's called a positive determination, meaning we will be required to file a full notice of intent with them, and as part of that notice of intent, we will file, you have to file with Natural Heritage, because on your notice of intent filing, it says, are you in a habitat, or you check yes, that means you gotta submit. So I'll get you a copy of the Conservation Commission's determination. But as I think I might have mentioned at some point or another, till we get this thing finalized and we're ready to go, then we'll submit it for Conscom approval and natural heritage too. I think what was recommended, and correct me if I'm wrong, by your engineer, is that you need to put a condition in your, depending on your determination, but if you make an approval, you need a condition that says that the project will adhere to any and all conditions imposed on us by the Conservation Commission or Natural Heritage. That's what you're suggesting, right? Because we don't have those conditions yet, so we won't until after this. But we're fine with that condition because the law requires it anyways.
The only problem with that is usually in past subdivisions, conservation has usually weighed in and given us their input before we close the hearing on it.
Okay.
This is one of those ones where I know it's tied into the salamander issue as well. We'd like to at least have them on board before we.
Sure, I'll get you there, I'll get you there. They sent us a written,
Their meeting, the majority of the discussion was that, in fact, the majority of the subdivision is outside the 100-foot buffer zone. So they were,
Yeah, but the only problem you have is you have two wetlands with the houses in the middle of the two wetlands.
correct, yeah, but none of the work is within 100 feet of the wetland buffer, so it's out of their jurisdiction with the exception of the natural heritage, which kind of tied into, to ensure that we did file with natural heritage, they wanted the notice of intent filed just to do that.
Just
And
give us as
I-
much as, so.
I'll get you a letter
There's
from
a little bit of clearing that you could possibly claim it through here, even though these septic designs aren't designed yet. But as shown, we were outside of their buffer, and they acknowledged that, but then they kind of sunk their teeth into the natural heritage and requested that the NOI be filed.
Given the lines here, it might be worthwhile to just further explain the plan with open spaces, what's happening where. You know, public homes, probably wondering, a lot of people here, that try to understand where we're going next.
Yeah, if you want to briefly talk about the open space, this is an open space plan, so what we're trying to do is push the houses in the back and keep the open space in the front. And we have yet to determine, or the developer's yet to determine who's getting the open space, or how the open space will be.
And we will finalize that with you prior to finishing the process, and also we will, draft a condition that will require the conservation restriction be placed on the land at a timely, at a timely point in the process according to your condition. So we're gonna work with that.
Whether it's public access or not,
Mhm.
et cetera.
And that'll all be, we'll resolve all of that prior to finishing this process. But in general, as you all know, open space development allows you to essentially, once you determine that the number of lots that you're going to build would be allowed under a conventional layout, and I think the board has the opportunity to tell you if you have greater than 10 acres that you have to do an open space, and we've previously agreed to that. You're then allowed to cluster, I guess is a good word, right? You're allowed to cluster your homes. You can get reductions in lot sizes, frontage, and that was a question, I think, I'll double check, but I think although we don't meet the standard frontage, I think with the because we are an open space, we're allowed a reduction in frontage, so that's why we're thinking. And then so your lots are smaller, a little less frontage, you cluster your homes, and then what happens is all of the area outside of the building lots themselves is then designated as open space. It's required that it have a permanent conservation restriction on it, although the ownership can go in one of two or three ways. It can either be retained by a homeowners association, subject to the conservation restriction, or it can be transferred to a nonprofit, land preservation group, Audubon renovations, or it can be conveyed to the town. Right, through well, I think it's,
Doesn't have to be.
isn't it, no, but isn't it owned by owned by the town, but through the Conservation Commission, I think? Or does care and custody of the conservation? We are still working with our client to figure out that determination, but that will be made before we finish here. And lastly, Matt, do you have the numbers? In this particular case, I know we have it written, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's significant. You end up,
I think it's 56 acres.
56 acres, in this case, would be.
Yeah, 78%.
So 78% becomes open space, and and 22% is actually the development area. So the goal of open space, obviously, is to create large parcels that aren't developed, will be preserved forever, and in return, you get to cluster things, which should result in less construction costs, less roads. So that's why we're here, that's the permit we're seeking.
And is it okay if I show where I built the spaces, I believe, just
Sure.
so you understand? So this is open space B here. Here's it goes around the red envelopes, but it's sort of a horseshoe that winds through here. So it's like a horseshoe for open space A and open space B. And, one of the concerns people have, this is sort of prime agricultural land out here.
Also, could you mention a bit, I've tried to follow the chapter lands and different parts of it in and out, for agriculture, for forestry, and for recreation.
Right.
And I know
Currently, none of this is subject to any chapter. I think it was previously under an agricultural exemption.
In front, right. And then the tubing park, which is outside of this, the tubing park being along here, it's outside. Is this currently under chapter?
I'll have to check, but it might be
61B?
under the recreational
I think
one. I know the ski area proper is under a recreational.
Right.
I can check for you on the
It was
tubing park. I
forestry.
assume so, but I didn't do that, so I
so-
can check. And then they do have parts in Westford that were under forestry.
Right.
So we're gonna try to get these issues addressed. We're gonna meet it, are you gonna be ready in another month?
A month, yeah,
So
we
the
couldn't
chap-
be back in 2 weeks.
Anybody in the audience have any questions? Mr. Finley?
Rick Finley, Beaver Brook. I just have one question, and I've been following this and I missed something. At one of the meetings, we were talking about eliminating that right entrance. What happened to that this one?
Right now, they're not asking for any waivers, so what we had talked about at the site plan was to approve it with no waivers and then ask them to come to conditionally approve it that if they do want to take that road out, that we don't have any problem with. But right now, the easiest and the quickest way for them is not to ask for any waivers. Is that a correct way to?
That's perfect.
But eventually, it is our hope, and I think it's their hope that it's a redundancy of a roadway, only to make it adhere to the bylaw because there can't be more than 750 feet without second way in.
Thank you.
Anything else? Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Ed Foltz, Newtown Road. I just had one. The open space, is that accessible to the general public? Or is that open space only for the benefit of those homes?
Well,
That's
that
what-
was the question.
To be determined.
Historically, we've always asked the developer, and if you notice all the open space we've already done, be it Gray Farm, be it Cobb Meadows, so we like it to go to the town so that everybody can use it. We're not real thrilled about homeowner associations, although Cobb does have a small one in there too, but most of it, we like it so that everyone in the town of Littleton can get to enjoy. So that's, we're gonna be pushing them towards that. I'm not saying we're gonna be successful, but we're gonna be pushing them to do like all the other ones have done.
And I'm also not saying that's out of the question. There's issues with having your homeowners association, because then, even though it's restricted and the taxes are less, it is a tax, they still pay taxes on it. Whereas if you convey it over, usually though what we do there is you convey it over, but you predetermine where public access and trails would be, so that they're not walking through people's backyards.
And the other
So-
thing is, if they do donate it to the town of Littleton, they get a tax break on it as well, so.
Yes.
So it's in their best interest to.
It's like a chapter land, same.
Yeah, you're donating a land that's restricted though, so it's limited.
You donate it before you put the restriction on it. We've done it.
I want to talk to you about that.
Anyway, all right, any other questions?
That could change the flow. Thank you.
I just have a curiosity. Bill Brown, Old Orchard Lane. I just have a curiosity, on that cart path that goes up to Westford, is that on our town, accepted town way? from 1700?
Boy, I looked, I tried.
This is the town line. Westford is.
It's been there forever,
It goes
it's acknowledged, but it's not on any.
We even researched whether in fact it had ever been formally accepted as a county road, because it was always referred to as a county road. It was showed on county maps. It's not a road, which would have been beneficial. But just a note of interest, from the Westford line down, that was accepted as a public road in the mid-1800, or early 1800s, when the town of Westford was actually the town of Chelmsford.
And you mean Westford upwards, not downwards?
Well, yeah,
Upwards.
well, from the Westford-Littleton line down to Westford.
Okay.
At one time, Westford was Chelmsford There was no Westford. And Chelmsford actually accepted that portion as a public road prior to the annexation of Westford. So it is a public road in Westford, but it is nothing, no formalized road in Littleton.
Any other questions?
Yes, my question about agriculture, can I just point that out?
Very quickly.
Okay, so the prime agricultural land is here. Now, what this does, if this gets approved, one of the secondary effects is it freezes the zoning for the current situation for 8 years. And this plan doesn't have to be built. New plans can be submitted, but they preserve the zoning for 8 years. So one of the concerns is using this prime agricultural land. If the open space plan goes in, I don't know if you could actually designate these as APR lots, which would be $10,000 to $20,000 per acre for the owner. But one of the things that is of interest that is worthwhile thinking about is that, this is an agriculture, but if all this were in agriculture, in active agriculture, it does allow you to do APR. And if it isn't an active agriculture, you lose that opportunity. So even if you've cultivated this, it might be worthwhile letting all this be leased out to someone, even at no cost, to keep it active.
I don't know that they're not planning to plant in the spring as they always have done. I don't know they're not going to.
But it's a consideration for your client.
I can find out, thank you.
Anything else? Any other issues before we continue this to the 10th?
Well, we have to continue.
We just continue. All right, so I'm sure you and Green can work your stuff out so that there's no,
Our goal is to have a clean technical engineering letter by the 10th, and then we can talk. I will have the answers by then on the conveyance, or, which group, and we'll have the CR stuff.
Okay.
More of that
Okay.
on the 10th.
What time on the 10th?
Well, I'm thinking if we push this one till 8:15, that might be a good slot.
Okay. So the 10th, April 10th, 8:15.
Okay, who made that motion?
I did.
Charles.
All right, whatever. All in favor? Aye.
So these people are sort of caught up in a little bit.
Yeah, we're getting,
At least another meeting. And
Mark, did we just vote on something?
we just voted to continue it to the
continue.
10th.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
And do we
Three of us did.
think there'll be just one more meeting on this?
Do you think you're gonna be done?
Yeah, if we can get it all done, we'd love to
So
close when we can, but
next meeting may be the last one, but it may
whatever it
continue.
takes.
All right, if we have to continue, because we don't have the verbiage right, and Chris and Doug can't decide on how the CR is,
It's complex.
as long as we're to the last
I'm
end.
confident we'll get it done, though.
Okay.
Do our best.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So Marion, I guess I didn't vote on that one.
Oh, that's all right.
That's okay.
You can vote twice on the next one. All right, so we have the 8:15 flood map. Are we doing the flood maps now? So people came to see if their land is
I
flooded
still
now?
like the coastal zone reconstruction part. If we have coastal zones, we're more trouble than.
So what do we have to do? Just vote if we agree with this?
You have to hold a public hearing and take any comments, and then hopefully close the hearing with respect to that bylaw.
Yeah.
And recommend to town meeting.
That's great.
Okay, do we have to read it?
Yeah, Rich just got the one for all three of
Read
them.
it.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yeah, call it.
Okay, public hearing for the zoning bylaw amendments. The Town of Littleton Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Thursday, March 13th, 2014, starting at 8:15 PM in room 103 of the Shattuck Street Town Hall, 37 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Mass. To consider 3 zoning bylaw amendments sponsored by the Planning Board according to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5. At 8:15, First Amendment, flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance study. This proposed amendment would amend Article 16, Wetlands and Floodplain Regulations, Section 173 through 72, 173-72 through 173-76 to reflect the updated FEMA flood insurance rates, maps, and flood insurance study. Second Amendment, registered marijuana dispensaries. This proposed amendment would delete existing Article 17, which established a temporary moratorium on 27, I'm sorry, which established a temporary moratorium on medical marijuana treatment centers through June 30th, 2014, and create a new overlay zoning district within a Massachusetts licensed registered marijuana dispensary, RMD, may be authorized by special permit with strict conditions. Third Amendment, accessory dwelling units. This proposed amendment would amend Article 13, accessory dwellings, to allow accessory dwelling units up to 1,000 square feet by special permit by the Appeals Board under certain conditions. The full text of the proposed bylaw amendments are on file at the town clerk and planning board offices and can be viewed during their office hours or online at littletonmass.org. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed zoning amendments should appear at the time and place designated. The town of Littleton does not discriminate on the basis of disability. Further, a signed translation of this hearing will be provided for the hearing impaired upon request by contacting the planning board office 1 week prior to the meeting date. Richard Crowley, clerk.
Okay, so the
You're on.
first one we're going to take up is the floodplain, which is behind us. Can everyone see that? I see 495, I think.
Yeah, probably.
So basically, this is, the U.S. government has decided where our new floodplains are going to be, and it's up for us to.
Yep, they printed, done new studies and printed several new panels for Littleton. And, this is to formally adopt them into the zoning bylaw so that we stay current with FEMA requirements to keep homeowners covered by flood insurance if they have purchased it.
So if we don't approve it, then FEMA won't pay any claims if this is actually a flood area.
Right.
But the complaints from the public are mostly with coastal areas or not coastal areas.
Well, this is global warming. All right.
Is anybody here to complain about what they just decided where our floodplains are? Nope. One complaint?
I'm Joanne Jerry from Harwood Avenue. Can we actually see it, or is there any change?
Yeah,
How would
marked
it
here
be?
where the changes are on one of these. So if you want to come take a look.
It basically goes from the point
Well, yeah, there's difference.
all the way down the right side of, the left side of 495. All the way down.
These are, some of the panels, there's no changes in this one. This That's 495, that's Route 2. So there were no changes in, minor changes in this panel. There were changes in Littleton in this panel. No changes
We got the plans.
I mean, this is really more housekeeping than anything else. Does anybody have any, actually, let's vote this. You can't change those lines if you want.
So anyone have concern about?
My only question is whether the date of the plan that's referenced in the article is finalized is the correct date. I know we had draft documents, draft maps that we had by earlier. I think the actual maps have come in now
July 7th.
and have a date.
July 7th, 2014.
July 7th, 2014, okay.
Yeah, it states it here.
Okay.
And it's the same.
So those concurrent?
Yeah, I mean, that hasn't happened yet, but they will accept the they'll accept that date also.
As is, as.
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, done. Next one.
No. You close the public hearing in relationship to this,
Well, no, this
in
this
relation
first
to
one.
this
I
part
move
of
to close the
the,
meeting on this.
The public hearing on the floodplain. Second. Second, so moved. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'll entertain a motion to take a vote on the maps that were
To
presented.
recommend the town meeting?
Recommend that we approve these at town meeting. So moved.
I second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we got that one out of the way. All right,
Good to be
Thank
kept
you.
honest.
okay. The second article that we're talking about is, this is for the cultivation of medical marijuana. Now, before we get into this, I just want to make sure that everyone understands. What?
I'm sorry, there's still copies in the back.
Yeah, if you have a copy going in the back. So we have a moratorium in place right now. So right now, the town of Littleton is not entertaining any motions to put any medical marijuana facilities in the town. That moratorium expires in July. Is it July it expires? So if we don't have a bylaw in place, then anyone who wants to come to Littleton to grow medical marijuana can come anywhere they want. So what we did in conjunction with the selectmen and town council was to come up with a bylaw that restricts where the medical marijuana can go. We've gotten a lot of input about people not wanting it on the Morrison property and the farmland there. We put that in there so that there was some place that the town actually owned, so that it didn't look like it was as restrictive as we really want it to be. I don't think anybody on this board is opposed to taking the Morrison property out of there, because one of the things we didn't consider when we talked about the Morrison, there's been funding that we got from other agencies, and they might not be too thrilled about a medical marijuana facility and something that they helped get grants for and things like that for the Morrison property. It's not, I don't think we own it free and clear, do we?
No, and also you had $1 million donation from Eunice Morrison, so it could be kept in the public interest as scenic farmland, so
maybe
that would be an issue too.
Maybe that's not the best place to consider, considering there's some underlying funding that went into that one, so.
Mark, for the people who are in the audience, could you explain where the Morrison property
It's
is?
the old Morrison farm down off of Nagog Hill Road, the one that we're still continue to farm as an apple orchard.
It's an orchard, yeah.
It's an orchard.
Yeah.
Nagog Hill Road and Neshoba Road, it's all this green area.
And what we're proposing in the bylaw is basically if somebody does want to come in and grow marijuana, it has to be inside a metal building, it has to be secured. We're trying to lean more towards the industrial land in the town of Littleton so that it's not in someone's neighborhood. We have 1,000 foot from is it 1,000? 1,500 feet from any school or churches too, right? Did we include churches in there? Churches?
Yeah.
So
Actually, I don't
it's a
think it's
real
supposed to.
limited area where it can act. Well, that doesn't look real limited.
That's a good one.
Those are the circles where you have to stay away from, correct?
Well, those will change over time depending on where the daycares and the schools and the churches are, but today this shows a lot of the areas
So we
where
have to
they can
stay
be
out of those
excluded.
areas in order to give somebody someplace to grow.
Our intention is, our hope is that hopefully nobody ever comes, but if someone does, it's gonna be in an industrial facility inside a metal building. You're not gonna know, hopefully not gonna know it's there. It's gonna have security, and it's not gonna be growing out in the fields or something like that. It's gonna be inside a building.
Can we add summer camps to that?
It should be, because that's an issue certainly for this.
That's an issue for the
area.
Morrison property, but I know
Well,
it's,
it is for Mega
I know, but I also know it's an issue for the other side, because the Littleton lumber thing is industrial, isn't it? Omega Way.
Yeah, and that should be eliminated as well. Neshoba Day Camp spans both
Yeah,
parts.
so that would probably knock it out anyway, because it's daycare.
John Lewis, the Makerway. Also, you got Newtown Hill, there's a park area there, and your bylaw is saying you'll stay away from that as well.
Conservation land.
Conservation land with the
I-
allotment space.
It should,
And that'll
I
be
don't think you
direct-
can include
the opposite.
restrictions on being near conservation land also.
you can, because the selectmen said that they were interested also in having a street like for where the zoning is for adult entertainment or adult use. If you look at that bylaw, they explicitly say no parks, no conservation land. And they're limited only to industrial 1A, which is industrial with storage. This is industrial 1A and 1B. But some of the adult entertainment area is more restricted than this. So my take is that some of this should be cut down.
Go ahead, Chris.
So
One
we
second.
talked about limiting that, we talked about limiting that.
Go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. I just wanted to add to that response that the 1,500-foot setback applies to public parks, playgrounds, athletic fields, or other public recreational lands. Any town-held recreational or land open to the public is going to trigger the setback, and you're not going to be able to locate within 1,500 feet of that.
That 1,500 feet is something that we attempt to impose. It's not something that's state regulated, correct?
That's correct.
That's what
Yeah.
we decided, we could have said 50 feet.
We've gone well, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health regs have a 500-foot mid setback.
So-
But nothing prevents the town from
Increasing.
increasing that and making it more protected.
Thank you.
The balancing act of this whole thing is we don't want to make it too restrictive that the Attorney General throws it out in the way of no protection, but we want it enough so that you're not going to find these where kids are going to congregate and where the public's going to be. So
That's the
we
idea.
thought 1,500 feet was probably the furthest we could go without looking at it to be too restrictive. Mr. Sussman?
Are you distinguishing in the bylaw between cultivation and dispensing? Now, you mentioned metal buildings. For cultivation, a greenhouse might be used, so.
No, it's metal buildings. It's going to be inside a metal building, so you don't know what's even inside there.
No, but cultivation under those circumstances wouldn't work.
Lights.
Grow lights, it's going to be hydroponic.
We're all in pots and lights and stuff. It's not...
Well, but these questions, for the RMD facility, it could be the cultivation, could be the processing, or the dispensary of selling and people sampling with a limited edition. As far as I can tell, Chris, and this is...
And you can go in like a
your
brownie
take.
and have a...
I like this stuff. For the RMD, it doesn't really specify one or the other. And I don't know if you can specify, I haven't seen it.
So there are three different sort of general components to an RMD. It's cultivation, processing, and distribution. An RMD can be all three of those things combined, or it can be any one of them individually. So the proposed zoning amendment uses the term RMD. Something would be an RMD if it was just a cultivation site, or if it was just processing, or if it was any two or all three of the components combined. So
one-stop shopping was...
So, I have a
Well,
question.
I think that in practice, you wouldn't be too concerned if you had a greenhouse in a place to grow the stuff.
No, it's going to be
But the
inside a
greenhouse
building.
is different from what you think of as a greenhouse, because it's going to be a secure indoor facility that can be located any place and probably wherever soil, or if it even uses soil, is probably brought in and it has no relationship to the land whatsoever. So you probably wouldn't want someplace where you already have good agricultural soil that it would displace.
So Chris, if they change the state law, so like CVS or Walgreens can dispense,
That's a whole
does that
different...
mean they can't do it because they're not in the zone, or would that state law supersede our zoning bylaw? Because it's an established,
no, we're in the proposed amendment, we are adopting the Massachusetts DPH definition of
Right.
RMD. But that's the definition as it currently exists, and so that's the definition really everybody's got to work with. If DPH were to change its regs and make it somehow more permissive, I don't think that's likely to happen soon, but certainly down the road. But if DPH changed its regs, our zoning bylaw would, for the time being, stay the same. It wouldn't automatically change with it, and the town could then engage in some
amendments.
The thought process as to how it wanted to react to any change at the state level. But we would continue to regulate and prohibit RMDs as they are currently defined.
Sir.
Bill Brown, Little Old Orchard Lane. A question regarding the Morrison property particularly. Like, I'm on a Littleton Conservation Trust, and we have Sarah Doublet that's sort of right across the street there too, next to the day camp. And so you have people wandering through, town people, kids, Boy Scout troops. I lead hikes through there sometimes. And you have people picking apples at the orchard, which so I don't know if that qualifies under this recreational land. And also I wonder, when the Morrison Orchard was purchased by the town, was there some kind of conservation restriction or something about what the property could be used for?
Well, as I said earlier, we've already got this amended so that we can take the Morrison property out before town meeting, because
Oh, all
it
right.
seems like most people don't want to put it in the Morrison auction. And so we've already talked to Chris
But
about.
does the law, my question, I guess, then beyond that is, where it says recreational land and facility, is that including conservation land? Is conservation land recreation land?
It should probably specify that specifically,
It'd be-
the same
to me,
way
it
the
sounds like
adult
it
entertainment
doesn't
use
have to be,
bylaw
it could be
does.
interpreted that way, but it could it'd be stronger if it also said recreational land and conservation land.
So,
Yes, ma'am, name, please.
Marcia Mark Antonio, Newtown Road. So would the Frost property be included in this as not an area that would be here?
And the Frost land being the Long Lake land,
Yes, the Long
Frost
Lake
Lake,
land, yes.
that's conservation land.
Right.
And there are probably purchases on it, there's a CR on it.
Well, if it's not in the industrial district or one of the other named parcels, you cannot, so the way that the bylaw is structured to work is you can only cite in the industrial, you can only cite on one of the parcels that we've identified as being in the overlay district. As it was originally drafted, that was the industrial A district, the industrial B district, Morrison Orchard, and one additional parcel.
And the police station.
And the police station. So you can only conceivably locate an RMD on one of those lots. Within those lots themselves, any proponent would have to contend with the 1,500-foot setback. So the 1,500-foot setback operates on top of the overlay zone.
So is that from the location of the building or the property?
The property.
That is from the property
Most
line
points of the property.
containing the daycare or school
So
or
it's-
whatever,
it's-
to the
it's
building, to the
It's the
RMD.
circumference, it's from every
So
one
we're
of
going
that
to
property
take,
line. to the end.
we're gonna take the Morrison property out, so you don't have to worry about any of the other conservation, because it's industrial A or industrial B is the primary area where this is proposed.
And Mega Way being taken out.
And Omega Weight being taken out also, but
Close
because
to
it's
the daycare.
it's close to the daycare.
It
abuts. It abuts it, so.
But can we take that out?
Can we take what out?
The Morrison
Omega
property out of it, because it
Right.
fits, well, the Morrison property fits in those little, outside of those red circles we drew earlier,
We
correct?
can take it out.
And you can take it out.
Even though
All
it's
right, then
town
let's
land?
just do it, be done with
Yeah,
it.
we're creating
Could
an
have cut this
overlay.
over about 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, just cut it.
No, there are a number of
Sir,
issues.
Dominic Ryan, Newtown Road. I have several comments. One first about the setbacks. In the case of a dispensing point of sale, you might consider that the point of access to it is sort of separate from the building itself. You'll have traffic in and out. You might consider that that is part of the setback, not just the building. If the building has to be a long way back, but you still have.
Should be from property line to property.
An
is
entry
for-
point,
it
that you're
is-
going to have traffic in and out. If it's a point of sale, you're going to have a lot of people. you'll have
Yeah,
all
it's,
those-
it's structured from the property
On the
line.
property line.
Okay.
The furthest
That's
point
what-
or the
that's
closest point of the
clarification.
property line.
The other is in several places in here refers to having enough lighting for security. Lighting can have a big negative impact on any abutters. Lighting consideration should be part of, sort of minimizing the effect on other people in the abutters should be part of what gets looked at.
We're talking about putting it in commercially zoned properties. Most commercially zoned properties have perimeter lighting around their metal buildings and everything for security and everything else like
Yeah.
that. That's where we're primarily trying to put this. So it's not gonna be in neighborhoods, we're trying to keep it out of any place like that. Commercially, the industrial parks that we have in the town currently, with the metal buildings already there, the hope is that if somebody does wanna come in, that we're never gonna know it's even there. It's already in a metal building that's gonna be secure. It could be books, it could be marijuana or something, we're not gonna know what's in there, and there's gonna be security for it. Yes, Mr. Pope?
So the self-storage facility that's on Newtown Road, I assume is zoned in one of these two zones. It's in a residential area. There's nothing, there's houses right next door and across the street. Now, to those neighbors, it's not intrusive because they have one lit sign and it's been there for like 1,000 years. But technically, wouldn't that building qualify? It's not near schools, it's not near recreation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's right there on the green zone.
So, you're talking about the brand new one that just got built?
No, no, no. I'm
Are you
talking
talking about the
no,
old
no.
Beaumont thing?
The
No.
old factory or whatever that was turned into self-storage on Newtown?
No, because that's within the footage from
That's here.
Neshoba camp.
What is it?
It is.
Oh, yeah.
But what's the underlining zoning there? Is
That
that-
can't be within
It
it.
is industrial.
Yeah, but
It is industrial, that's why I was concerned. I wouldn't want to have an RMD in that, it's a stretch, but it's a neighborhood.
Well, there are a number of
Kids and everything else.
businesses.
I'm in the butter on that property, so I'm very interested here.
Yeah, I am too. I'm
I
just
am as
down the
well.
road from
I am too.
Well, I think, we've looked at industrial A and industrial B, but I think that has to be toned down some. Well, I've looked at what other towns have done. They have criteria often for where in the overlay district it can be, and, some of that's incorporated already. And then when a special permit is issued by this, by the planning board, there are other criteria there. And actually, I did submit something, but I want to hear what other people are saying. Cambridge has worked it out fairly well. They're one of the more sophisticated groups that have identified it, and I've taken out some of those restrictions. And some of it is, especially for the special permit aspect, to value the opinion of the butters, thinking of residential areas. I mean, I could read some of this, or, I've already submitted late to tomorrow, and I submit it to you.
What is the Newtown Road, what's that zone, B?
The old Beaumont,
It's
That would be
A,
a
B?
B. That would be
It's
industrial
probably
B.
B. One
What if we
A
just
is
took out
for-
B and left it to A, where does that leave us?
Well, it's hard to say. For adult use, adult entertainment use is all
Takes out-
1A, but has other
Got that one
restrictions.
down.
Takes out, does it take out Foster and just leave us with,
Might take out too much.
down by New Estate?
How can it take out too much if it's acceptable for adult entertainment? Then why wouldn't it be acceptable for RMDs?
That's what I'm saying, why can't we
I
just
thought
whack B and then get rid of
Yeah, Why can't
Newtown?
we just,
Okay, we want to ask Chris to weigh
Chris,
in
can we
on
do
how
that?
much, because
Yeah, because we don't want it too restrictive that they throw it out.
That's right.
When we did adult entertainment, I think we only did industrial A.
What are they
Yes,
gonna,
I'm
how
correct.
big our A is versus B, or what, together, is that what they're gonna consider?
There needs to be a place where someone might realistically locate an
Yeah.
RMD. There don't need to be
So it doesn't
an
have to have
abundance
one
of
big.
locations where that could happen.
So-
But you need to be able to demonstrate to the Attorney General that someone might realistically be able to construct and operate an RMD.
We put all
There's
the
like
adult and
500
industrial A.
square feet of space left in the
That's
Smith
right.
line.
Right.
They could put it right in there, no one ever know it was there, the dogs could eat it, it'd be
Well,
great.
that's part of the,
Right,
that's part of
That's
the green.
industrial.
by
Right,
taking
right.
1B out, you take the Newtown
So why
Road
don't we
piece
just
out?
leave it as all
Yeah.
industrial A land and take the industrial B
Take
land
B
out?
off the table?
Yeah.
That would be lovely.
That would be good.
I mean, if you look at the other bylaws already there, it
So
covers some things, but it is just 1A. So
It's
maybe
actually
1A
quoting
behind the
re-
police station.
Adult
Yeah,
entertainment.
let's do adult entertainment.
If it's good enough for that, it should be good enough for this.
Works.
Right, is that, why don't we have Chris look at it, if that's not too big of a change before we take it to town meeting?
you
Can someone point out where 1A is?
You can
You
take
can't.
out.
That's what I said earlier, I think it's pretty
You're
much
cutting from
part
the
of Foster
proposal.
and,
If someone
2A.
could-
It would be really useful if we had a
Point
map
to 1A and
of
1B.
the.
yes, it
The
would.
one that used to be up
Do we
there.
have one there?
Do we have a,
Had one up
I can't
there
get
for the longest
that.
time.
we don't have a,
We don't have one?
Do you
I know
know
Sandville
Sandville is
is
1A,
1A. The industrial park down on the other side of Beaverbrook is 1A.
Industrial A, industrial
I think
B.
1A is where you can have open
It's
stores.
95.
Yeah.
That's-
is the area you're talking about?
Yeah, I think
That's one of the
those are
areas.
basically the
So from the
industrial
end of
A.
New Estate Road, straight down there.
So why don't we look at that and we'll amend it to just
Beaverbrook is
1A.
1A?
Beaverbrook, the other side is 1A.
What, my side of it?
The side heading towards Groton.
Correct.
Where all those, right down by the well site, that's industrial A.
Really?
Yeah.
So the Springdale Farm,
No, that's residential, that's all, but towards that way,
we're coming from the common, we take it right onto Beaverbrook Road.
before
Yeah, yeah.
Beaverbrook Road.
Right, from there towards the center of town.
Correct.
Is all industrial.
I think just to the,
You can see right.
the point is industrial B, isn't it?
A.
It is industrial A, all right, so from 495 all the way. Yes, ma'am.
Anna Mayer, Juniper Road, doesn't that have a capacity to Google? Can't you
No.
just Google our town website and go to the zoning board and?
We're doing it
I've got it on my
We're
iPad.
doing it on the iPad right now.
I only have what I downloaded onto my
There's only,
desktop.
industrial A,
I
I'm
can't
pretty sure
get
it's
to.
the Sandville property and the
But I
industrial.
The
can't,
other thing is, they're gonna, this, it's not gonna be the size of this room. You know, it's gonna be a football field.
The industrial
Put it
A?
beside your house then.
No, I'm not saying, I don't, fine, I don't care, I don't smoke
I
this
don't
stuff.
want it
I
in my
don't-
neighborhood.
All right,
That's
so
why I'm.
I don't think
one A
that's
to live
the issue,
with.
huh? They're not that big, are they?
They're
Yeah,
big.
Yes, sir, one more.
Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. I know this is a lot of legalese, but in the spirit of things, when we bought that property, the Orchard, you know, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, it was not, in my opinion, it was not meant to be a pot farm. And I am definitely against it.
We're not doing it, we've already addressed it.
We're
It's
taking
already
it
by
out.
that.
We're taking
that off.
taking it out.
But point well made.
Yes, sir, way in the back.
How's it going? My name is John Ruth. I live on Powers Road. Just real quick, I was reading through this, and there's a section here where you talk about limiting or reducing the 1,500 feet requirement if they meet certain requirements. Do we, I mean, I don't know, you guys are the ones who are dealing with the state on this, but is that a requirement that we have that reduction plan in there if they meet one of those requirements?
I missed the question.
I think
I
that's
apologize, I missed the
if,
question.
no,
1,500 foot
if,
setback.
if a daycare or whatever moves in after an RMD is issued a special permit, then that's when the setback can be reduced. It's up to the daycare where they want to site.
Okay, it's just not cited in here. I know, like, I've dealt with a lot of states in this type of issue before, and I know reading this, it doesn't say that in here, so people could fight that in the future.
Chris, you take note of that?
I do.
All right, I have a question for Chris, too. The state says 500 feet, when our bylaw is going to be 1,500 feet, so we're making it more restrictive than the state.
That's correct.
And is that, can we pass zoning regulation that's more restrictive than the state?
Yes.
Is there precedent for that?
Yes.
Okay.
The Department of Public Health regulations provide for the 500-foot setback, but they specifically say, I think this might be true regardless, but the regs themselves say on their face that nothing about them prohibits the towns from adopting more rigorous regulations than they have.
Okay.
The state regs on the siting say that if there are no local regulations, then you have to be at least 500 feet away from a school or place where children congregate. But if you have local regulations, then you also have to comply with those. So if we establish higher thresholds, then someone would have to comply with our higher thresholds.
So there is nothing in the state regs that says no other municipality can supersede or exceed our regulations. Is there a statement?
Well, I think what we don't want to lose sight of is that the bottom line is that the Attorney General says that you cannot prohibit the use everywhere.
Yeah.
You have to allow it somewhere. And so, and then the question that council is having is just to make sure that it's allowed in enough places that it passes the smell test by the time the Attorney General has to approve the bylaw.
And the additional thing is if it gets voted down at town meeting and a moratorium's out, then it's opened up to the state regulation.
That's
That happened in
exactly.
Natick or Framingham.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. Come June, after June 30, the moratorium turns into a pumpkin, and that if we do not have some sort of local zoning bylaw with restrictions in place, then there are no restrictions. And I got to tell you, from experience with four entities that were looking for cultivation sites in this town during the round this winter, but for that moratorium, we would have had one or more applications that went in with Littleton as a cultivation site. So we ought to think carefully about where we want it, and only put it where I mean, you do have to put it somewhere. You can't say.
So if we cut to the chase, we put it down, industrial 1A, we're done with it? Is everyone good with that?
No, there's more conversation.
Why do we need more?
I just had one
quick question.
One quick question. Well, you'll be republishing the updated version, right?
Correct.
Would it make sense, and I'm not sure it would, that's what I'm asking, and to address your concern, if you had another article that extended the moratorium for a year.
You can't do that.
You're not gonna let us
No,
do
no,
that.
I was gonna say, in the event that this fails, that
No,
can
she won't.
pass.
No, it isn't allowed.
The Attorney General has been crystal clear that she will not approve moratorium beyond June 30 of this year. That she's
Okay, I
done
was
it
just
in
trying to
hundreds of
address-
So we're
communities.
gonna,
happen.
we're gonna
She's not gonna extend it.
what we're gonna come to town meeting with is an article that says industrial A, we're gonna take the Morrison property off the table, and any other little tweaking we need to do. Do you wanna have one more meeting before we go to town meeting?
I
Wanna
think-
do it
I
on
think we need it.
the 10th? Do we wanna,
not on Monday.
or are we good until, for town
I
meeting?
think we want to review the overlay district. One of the things I noticed on the Cambridge overlay district, they did analysis, and it wasn't just some previous zone. One of the, provisions for carving out this overlay district was readily accessible for monitoring by law enforcement, public safety, that's fire, police, rescue, and code enforcement personnel. That sort of makes sense. You don't want it in some remote place, you don't want a dead-end street. There are other aspects. I have sent you a copy of this. And I think you have to
Why
sort of
don't you have that
consider it.
explicitly stated, I mean, isn't that?
They're gonna have to have
Strict
security.
access to law enforcement.
We're
We
gonna-
don't know exactly where all of 1A is going to be.
It's, we do know where 1A is gonna be. It's gonna be in the industrial parks or on where the warehouses are on the Sandville, the old Sandville property. That's the last of the 1A stuff we have here. We'll have the maps redone so that people can go online and see where it's gonna be. I don't have a problem with continuing this till the 10th. Do you wanna, one more meeting?
I see no reason for another meeting.
If I could, I would strongly suggest that if there are amendments to the warrant is going to be posted
Right,
on the 25th of March.
right.
So so if you want to take the Morrison property out, please take it out. Let's not post it with it in there, then we have this discussion again at town meeting.
Right.
Limit if you want to take 1B out, take that out, just leave 1A. You're welcome to the police station, where they can keep an eye on it, I guess, but, and then it would seem to me the only other substantive issue looking through this is if you haven't decided who the special permit granting authority is.
Well, I was thinking,
Should be
it should be us.
This should be
Yeah.
specified.
Because
It
we
It should specify, because right now.
All right, so we'll
you-
specify the
They
planning
should be
board
on
special
board.
permit.
Yeah.
I think it's,
You think it's already in there?
Yes.
It's already in there.
yeah.
All right, I think we're good with this for town meeting. I don't really think we need to have another meeting on this.
I don't either.
Yes, ma'am. what are you-
I have one more question. Of the industrial A areas, how much is available? For people to move in and build something like this?
We're hoping none.
But, well,
Well, something
they
has
have
to
a
be
right to do
available.
that.
Well,
Yeah,
actually, you
something
limit
has
it
to
to
be
one in
available,
town.
so
The bylaw limits it to one
What
in
is
town.
available?
We're only allowed one in town so if somebody does come in, it's only gonna be one.
I understand.
You mean
but
how much square
is-
feet? There's 1.6 million square feet of commercial
Are they going to be able to
office
find
space
something,
open in
is
Little
what she's asking.
How much is, not owned, available, and if somebody did want to purchase it right now, how much
There's a lot of-
land
Well,
area
at
is it?
least half the cement
There's a lot
plant's
of
wide
warning
open.
signs.
I mean, not the pre-stress plant next to New State Road. The manufacturing only took up like a third of it. So that's all wide open.
Yes, one last
Yeah,
question.
just to be clear, Joe Manir, Newtown Road, so if you pull up to 1B, that takes the safe storage facility in Newtown out of the picture? Is that right?
We believe so,
I think
yes.
that's what I heard, but and that's the plan for the,
That's your intent.
That's our intent. Take that out. No industrial that borders any kind of residential.
Yeah, but we
We want
have a-
industrial on industrial.
If a question of mine, it does help to continue it. If it's real simple, slam dunk,
Well,
no
no,
issue.
no,
but keep in mind, we do it this year. It's a new law, right? So we'll review it again next year. We'll get updates from Keith and from town council. So if something changes and we gotta go back at it, we'll redo the bylaw, put it in front of town again and change it. This isn't permanent, but
It can be, but
getting one
right now,
on the books.
we need it done.
We need a stopgap method for right now.
Stop loss, that's what we need right now. So this is what we're
We
doing.
gotta get on the board.
Yeah, just 1A.
All right. Any other
Yes.
questions?
No more questions.
All right, so I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing.
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the bylaw.
Recommend.
I recommend that we take it to town meeting with the provisions that we're gonna take industrial B out, we can take the Morrison property out. We can leave the, Megaway is gonna be taken out because it's gonna be too close to daycare anyway, so. To keep, we'll keep the police station in at town meeting, people wanna take that out?
Yeah, we'll give it up at
Give them something, yeah, you gotta give something, all right, so we'll do that.
As the chief read in on that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now we have one more article. We have the
Close this
accessory,
meeting?
we have one more, accessory use. We close it. Last but not least is the zoning amendment bylaw to allow for an accessory dwelling for the town of Littleton. Thank you. For those of you who haven't read it, I'll give you a quick synopsis. There are copies of it in the back if you want to read that. What we're proposing is to allow an accessory use for people who have the big, older houses in town or need some help with staying in their houses and not have to sell them because the kids have moved away, or it no longer becomes a hardship, it becomes more of a financial issue. So we've come up with a zoning amendment to allow for that. As it is right now, the only way you can have an accessory dwelling is you have to be family members, you have to be dependent upon them. It's an extremely restrictive. What we're proposing to do is make it a little less restrictive so that there's not a dependency on a family member, it's more of a dependency on, you got a big house, you want to cut up a piece of it to help offset the taxes and everything else that we have to pay nowadays. And so we've drafted a bylaw that we're still keeping it in, we are still keeping it in the Board of Appeals purview, right? It's still going to be a permit from the Board of Appeals, is that how we, did we leave it that way?
Yes.
All right, just want to make sure. So, does the board have any questions first?
No. I think we did a little bit of work on this at the last two meetings, and I think it looks good right now.
The
What
only,
about all the comments?
the only problem I have with the whole thing is we're now looking at Littleton like it's a two-family. Everything's a two-family.
Right, that's what's stated.
Even though it still has to go to the Board of Appeals, I'm not trying to say there should be a hardship to it, but we don't allow multiple families in the town of Littleton now. This is a change, and granted, it's gotta go to the ZBA, but there really is no reason for the ZBA to turn it down, correct, Chris? It's a by right, you're allowed by right.
Having gone over this with the board, a couple weeks ago, and sort of pared it down from back from its original, what was being discussed originally. I just wanted to make clear that what this is a special permit that is available, assuming you have obtained the original special permit for an accessory dwelling, which is for the purpose of having a dependent, a functional dependent, or a family member. So the bylaw currently provides that you can have a special permit for an accessory dwelling for family member, functional dependent. This new provision allows you to convert one of those, once you've established it, to I would say true accessory dwelling that could be rented out regardless of family relation or dependence. So you only get to establish one under this new proposal if you have essentially already converted the space to service someone who has.
So, I mean, I can't come in now and say I want an accessory dwelling.
Under this proposal, you could not.
You cannot. So this just deals with basically what's already grandfathered it in there. Or not grandfathered, but it's already approved.
I think the underlying concern of this proposal that I was trying to work into this draft is, once you've established a space in your house to house a family member or a functional dependent, what do you do when that space becomes vacant and whoever it was originally servicing is no longer using it? You've got the space, but you don't have the resident. So this new provision will allow you to convert that space into a rental unit that can be rented out to essentially to anyone. But you have to have set it up under the existing bylaw first.
So what happens if I have a big house and I'm in my 60s and I don't have any kids anymore and I want to set it up, so I have to go to the ZBA, get it function independent, and then go the next step after. I can still go through those 2 steps if I wanted to turn from now on. So what you're basically saying is nobody can do this from now on unless they've already got one.
This proposal does not provide relief to anyone who doesn't have, who has not already established an accessory dwelling under the existing town zoning bylaw.
So suppose that somebody wants to put an accessory dwelling
This
in,
proposal does not.
so you can't, so you're not gonna be able to do it.
It's actually 2 hurdles. You have to go in and establish a need for an accessory dwelling for your mother-in-law and get that first. And that's the whole process by itself.
And then the aftermath of it is, instead of having something that's empty, well, now, the other issue that I was personally trying to, is one, all right?
So that's a big hurdle.
The in-law is out, passed away, got into a fight, whatever, you know, mom, get out. And now I could rent an apartment to somebody who was not a blood relative or functionally dependent upon, one unit upon the other is the way it reads in the bylaw, the existing bylaw. Let's say another family that has 3 kids that have gone to college, they've moved on, and they're gone, and they still live in a large house. The Mark Antonios, you guys have a giant house, right? And there's just the 2 of you.
Right now, we're rattling around. They can't do it.
They hide.
We can't do it.
Well, unless they turned around and said, my daughter's coming back with her husband, and we build an addition onto it for this. Now, granted, they might be sidestepping things, and the daughter may never show up. But this is how they could possibly, which I don't really want it to be that way. I want you to be able to stay there and afford, the taxes in Littleton have gone up. Yeah.
This doesn't do that.
Right, so.
So it has to be another bill then?
It has to be something, there has to be some avenue that someone can be permitted to put in to change their existing structure,
Well, I think-
make it meet all the bylaws it has to now.
See, I disagree with that.
But I think,
I-
but Peter, I think in your scenario,
Yeah.
you would be eligible for the
Oh, I know I
for a
would.
special permit.
I would be, I already have one myself. My sister lives in it now, but, because my mother
And
passed.
a daughter moving back with her husband
Right.
would, someone one or more person related by blood or marriage.
Right, that would pass.
Yeah.
Yes. But again, what would happen,
No, I don't, I thought the whole idea was that so like you went ahead and did that, and then they leave, and then you're like, okay, I'm stuck with this space.
Right.
So now I have an economic hardship because I was trying to take care of a family member, so I should be allowed to convert that and
It's
give it to
rental,
another. And I think that's great. I don't think we should take the next step and say, you can condo your house, put a thing in for the intent of renting it. I don't think you should do that.
Okay.
So
And
that's
what we have now is that way. Well, the way it's written now is exactly what he just,
It must, in order to establish it in the first place, it's got to be accessory, it's got to be blood or marriage or functional dependent.
that
And
functionally dependent thing, that's the one thing I want clarified.
What does
Because
functionally, you mean?
You look it up in the
blood relative?
dictionary. Do you have anybody Google that for me?
How about just blood relative?
No.
No, it doesn't have to be.
That's language from,
Phil
that
Russell.
is language from the existing zoning bylaw, which this proposal does not
It doesn't address
attempt to
that?
touch. All this proposal in front of you now attempts to do is allow someone who is who has established an accessory dwelling pursuant to your existing zoning to switch it over, assuming they continue to live in the unit, and that's one of the requirements.
All that works great. And what you said is great also. You were asking a question, do you mind if I?
Go ahead, ask, go ahead, go for it.
Well, I just wanted to see what he had to say, so I didn't have to answer something twice, or he had a...
Yes?
No, you're behind you.
Oh, behind you.
Oh, sorry, Tom. You'll ask him.
Yes. Tom Coughlin, Coughlin Road. I'm definitely against this, and I'll tell you why. I live on Coughlin Road, which has 8 houses on the street. 4 of them have in-law apartments. What you just stated happens. Somebody passes away, they were a blood relative, they rent them out to non-blood folks. And what happens is, unintended consequences. There's a parking problem on a street that nobody addresses. We live on a narrow street, so if somebody parks there, it's a pain in the neck for everybody else that lives in that neighborhood. Up on Boxborough Road, that's the cut-through, if you will, for Boxborough Road. And it's definitely a hindrance to the folks that live on that road, if you will, including us. I have to make 2 or 3 swings to get out of my driveway, and I have a big driveway.
This comes with the parking requirement.
I'm sorry?
I know Coughlin, but I can't picture.
Yeah.
If they cut through the backs is of,
Yeah, it's,
Yeah.
well,
Mr.
that
Coughlin,
Foltz is over. Yeah, but it goes up, Coughlin goes up, and then you take a left, you're on Boxborough, or right. And so we have a lot of traffic going
Were
up that way.
those properties with the in-law apartments now, were those legal in-law
No,
apartments?
sir.
Well, then there's our issue, okay?
And
And
the other-
that's the problem in town, there's dozens and dozens of them,
Correct.
all right? So to do it legally, you have to have all the way the bylaw reads it. It needs to be either behind the front of the house, it can't be in front of the house. It has to have the parking spaces for
Right.
both the main house and the apartment.
Exactly.
2 spaces for it. Your septic system has to withstand it.
Here's the problem.
If you report it to the building inspector, it's $300 a day fine for them not to either get them out of there.
Well, here's the problem. Nobody reports it because it's a
Your friends.
neighborhood and they don't want to, create bad feelings. However, when the builder builds the parking area, it's for a car and a half. There's no regulation, if you will. So consequently.
There is.
It's very difficult for us, the folks that live on that road, to get by. And if they have a Patriots party or something, it's horrendous.
Well, wait,
It's horrendous.
but just to address your particular issue there, even if we pass this bylaw,
Yep.
it doesn't fix your problem.
He can fix his problem.
Mr.
We
Coughlin,
can't, we don't enforce it, so we can't go out to those 4 houses and say, hey,
The
you
building
gotta go
inspector is
in.
the one who enforces it.
The first in-law apartment was built, we had a different building commissioner at the time. It was very, very illegal. The Ethics Commission in Boston does absolutely nothing.
Well, you know what,
They do
and
now.
I want to comment on your street parking issue. I live on a road that has a similar problem, and it's a pain in the butt.
Right.
And that's something the town, the selectmen need to take up. Because street parking, especially in the wintertime, and not being enforced, creates problems, people trying to commute in the morning, kids getting pushed off the road. I mean, so that's a problem in Littleton, not just on your road, my road, and a lot of other roads, because they're narrow.
But a couple of points I want to reiterate. That we have 8 houses on the street, 4 of which have in-law apartments.
Yeah.
But it-
That's
Can I-
a lot.
can I ask you
And
a-
I'm sure it's all over town.
But
Can I ask you
can't
a
remediate
question?
it.
Wait a second, can you tell me how old, that's an old road.
That's correct.
How old are those houses? Are they,
We were one of the first ones to move in, it was 71.
and they're all from that era, or were they already there?
I would say 71 on up.
All right, so they don't fall into your category.
Right, they're not predating zoning, so they are illegal apartments.
see, Mr. Coughlin, this would not prevent people from creating legal apartments. What this would do is this would give people a vehicle to comply with the law. And so you won't have what you have on your street is a bunch of illegal places, because people then would have, if this goes through, people will have
An incentive to make them legal.
Yes.
To put the septic systems in, to give the
Yes.
parking spaces.
Yeah.
Or, because they're not gonna have the room, they're gonna still try and skirt it. So it's gonna take people like you to say, Roland, you need to go out and see this guy on 22 Coughlin Road and 28 whatever the numbers are.
But here's my point. It has unintended consequences, and the unintended consequences is the parking. And it's a pain in the neck, and I realize what you're saying, but am I gonna be the guy that calls up Roland and say, hey, we got a problem down here?
But see, if it's illegal, anything illegal will have unintended consequences. This comes with requirements for parking and requirements for space and requirements for septic. Anything illegal will have unintended
But
consequences.
if
This-
you've got
this
cars
is
on
planned-
the road, as it is now, that's illegal. Forget about the fact that there are more than 2 people living there.
It's legal according to the police department. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's legal between the hours, I think, of 11 o'clock at night and 5 or 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
You can park a car on any street in Littleton.
Yeah.
Between in the regular working hours. And that's just in the wintertime, that those hours are restricted. So I guess my feeling is that it's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work.
Well,
The alternative will be that you'll see more illegal apartments popping up all over the
They're
place.
all over town as we speak.
But we're trying to change that by giving people a vehicle to go legal instead of illegal. That's what this would do. This would give the people a pathway to have an illegal apartment. And along with that comes all these.
I'm really against it.
It would require you as a citizen to take appropriate action, and someone in your neighborhood to get together and say, look, things have got to change. Because what's being discussed here is a legal pathway, and that requires the other party to do, which is basically say this.
What it also would do is if you did, say that by some strange miracle, Roland found out about it and wanted to do something about it, once we have a bylaw in place, at the very least, he could make them become legal.
Upgrade.
Meaning, he could make them upgrade and put
Apply.
parking in so that they're not parking on the street and things like that.
Yeah.
It gives them a way out rather than just tear it down and say it's gotta go away. That's
Right now,
the
they
other-
don't
it
want
would
to tell
have-
anybody.
It would have a good benefit to it.
His point is well taken, if it's hard to enforce.
But it's like that
and the
It's
not
building
hard to
inspector-
enforce.
The building inspector is overloaded, so, look, the signed bylaw, that's why it fails, because it's up to the building inspector. There are all sorts of things. And even in his comments, it'll say, this is unenforceable. I mean, same thing with the Board of Health being bedroom release. It's very difficult to do. I mean, what makes a good bylaw law is something that, you know, sort of works well, and the burden isn't upon just one person swamped.
Don, we have lots of bylaws.
No, I'm saying,
Bypass.
he does bring up a good point.
I think we.
So because it's gonna make somebody work more, don't do it.
If you just,
No,
if you
no,
pass
yeah,
this
that's what
bylaw,
you're
it's
saying.
just gonna-
I'm saying-
it's
That's what you just
absolutely-
I'm
said.
saying, let's try to find two.
No, it's not like you're gonna end up with more of them.
You won't end up with more illegal apartments. You'll end up with legal apartments by this.
Legal two-family.
Yeah.
Only,
Yeah,
but
When I
that's
first-
right, yeah,
I-
it's a two-family.
The reason, one of the reasons we moved out here, because it's out in the country, it's a nice place to live. I didn't sign up for two-family houses in my neighborhood.
But you can't have a
That's what
two,
we have.
this is not a two, it's an accessory. And when the
It's
person,
semantics. You can call it whatever you want.
it has to
It's a
be,
two-family
the
house.
person living in this apartment has to start out as a blood relative.
Well, as.
Not anymore.
Yeah,
No,
well,
no, that's not true.
Listen,
Has to
It's
start
all,
out as a
they're
blood
not blood
relative.
relatives that live there.
that has to start out as a blood relative.
Or functionally dependent, which there's gotta be a way to determine exactly what functionally dependent is.
Whatever that means.
Look it up, it's a riot.
But
Anyway.
Well, the same thing, both bona fide, there's no test associated.
But I just want to go on the record that I'm
All
definitely
right,
against it.
so noted.
All right, does anyone else have any other concerns?
Otherwise, everything looks good.
We need to
No.
decide whether we're gonna vote on it and send it to, let the people in town meeting decide.
Well, how are you gonna reconcile all the comments from Roland, the building inspector raises
We already
legitimate issues, and also from Bill Farnsworth, who also raises good issues?
Yeah, but Don, all we're doing is sending it to the floor for a vote. If the town.
I think Farnsworth's
It's a
issue
moot
was the
point.
same that I had. Now that Chris has said that basically, you're not opening up for new people. This is for existing people that already have it.
Exactly.
That takes a lot of it out of there.
Yeah.
You know, it's more for the people that are there now, that are stuck with big houses that already have the in-law apartment. There's still mechanics for people that if they still want to go do it and they still have the big houses, they can start down the road and.
This helps people who live in Littleton stay in Littleton.
All right, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead, wait, Chris wants one more.
One issue occurred to me as I was, and I don't want to derail close to the public hearing, but one issue the board may want to think about that I didn't have guidance on as I was drafting it, but it's something I had a question that came up, is whether or not there ought to be inserted in this proposal any duration for the first use. So,
You go in 1 week to under existing zoning and then come back and say, well, mom changed her mind, she's not moving in, so I'm gonna rent it out.
So how do you say that, if I said, let's say we put a minimum of, I'm just throwing this number out there, let's say we said a minimum of 2 years.
yes.
But it can be mitigated by
Medical.
death, what?
Yeah.
I mean, we'd be looking for like, what language would work there? Death,
Or other good cause shown.
That's okay.
Satisfaction.
Yeah, that's a-
What type of a length are you looking? I was thinking 3 when you said that, I thought 3 years.
I
Two,
was thinking 2, 3, but
two.
2?
3's good, that's fine.
True, I don't care.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years with, or a medical,
With essentially a variance of the 2 years in
there's a
case
medical
What'd you call it?
uh,
cause?
warrants it, the medical issues warrant.
death, bona fide medical reason, or other good cause shown to the satisfaction of the special permit.
Yeah.
Presently, it also has in it that you're supposed to, every 3 years, give them an affidavit stating who's living in it to prove that it is blood relative.
Yeah.
That's sort of my question. How do you have tools to verify that mother moved in? You know, somebody makes out an application, so I'm gonna bring my mother to live in here.
There's an affidavit
My
that
mother's
goes-
been dead for 20 years.
Yeah, it's an affidavit that goes along
But
with
if
it.
somebody got teeth to verify that.
It's an affidavit that goes along with it.
That's Roland enforces that,
Actually,
not us.
And what he does for enforcement for the current bylaw is every 3 years sends out letters to those that have the special permit,
Yeah.
asking them to re-verify.
So you do have, you're
They have to
satisfied
renew.
with the way to verify it, that's.
It's like anything else, you're expected to tell the truth, it's like paying your taxes.
There's one last before we.
I just have another comment, that the folks in town, like, my neighborhoods are pretty, they take care of their houses. When you have folks moving in, when we're talking about mom passes away or dad passes away, and now you have a vacant apartment that they're renting out to any stranger on the street, they tend not to take care of their apartment or their that
But
well.
it's still your
And
house.
it's-
You have to be careful of the people that you rent it to.
But see,
Well, I'm not renting to anybody.
Wait, can I just make a point though? All we're voting on here tonight is to send this to the floor for a town vote. We're not approving it, so you can kill this on the floor.
Okay.
To answer your question too, Mr. Coughlin, that the owner of the house has to remain living in that house while he's renting that apartment. He can't move out of that house and then rent the apartment as a
Those are-
two-family.
Yes.
That's
Great
a
arguments to
two-family.
make during the
That's
town
not
meeting.
my argument.
He's,
All right, so-
he's living in that
Let's
house.
kill this debate.
I'd like to
You know, and
close
there's
this hearing.
some control
Yes,
there
voted to
because-
close.
Second.
Okay.
All those in favor?
And I'll entertain a motion to approve it, to send it to town meeting to vote.
As amended with,
As amended.
With the changes.
with,
Second.
All those in favor?
We have to recommend it.
Aye.
Aye.
It's a zoning act, we have to, so it was
I'll
for.
go
All
along.
Okay, now vote to close it here.
right, well, then I go, we close, we go home.
I second.
We don't have anything else, right, Maren?
Wait, vote to close. I
Vote to
second.
close, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chris?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I think it's gonna have
Those
problems in town.
are great arguments to make on the
Let
floor.
it go to the, let it
I
decide.
went along, yeah.